Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 15th, 2024 meeting of the Portsmouth City Planning Board. We call the meeting to order. We have some members not present tonight. I don't think we have any alternates to sit. So what you see is the members sitting this evening. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes for January 18th and January 25th of this year. Motion from somebody?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
First item is determination of completeness of site plan review for the Islamic Society of the Seacoast area as owner for property located at 686 Maplewood Avenue, requesting site plan review approval and conditional use permit approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Now move on to the public hearing for the same matter, which is a request of the Islamic Society of Seacoast Area's owner for property of 686 Maplewood Avenue, requesting site plan review approval for the construction of 6 single-family unit residential condominiums with associated paving, stormwater management, lighting, utilities, and landscaping, and conditional use permit in accordance with Section 10.674 of the Highway Noise Overlay District. This property is located at Assessor's Map 220, Lot 90, and lies within the single residence BRSRB district. Who is here to present this application?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Board. John Shagnon from Haley Ward, representing Chinburg Properties. Maria Pyburn from Chinburg Properties is here, and also with us tonight is the project architect, Carla Goodnight from CJ Architects. Project is on tax map 220, lot 90. We're requesting site plan approval for a 6-unit residential condominium, which will be known as Eden Point. Just briefly going through the plan set, there's the cover sheet. We have, next up is an existing condition plan and survey. The property is located south of Maplewood Avenue and east of Route 95. There's a commercial site and a residential site not depicted here on the easterly boundary, and on the southerly boundary there's an existing power line that feeds downtown Portsmouth. Next sheet is another existing conditions plan. This plan shows some soil test pits that we did on the property. And then the next one up is the site plan. So the units will be accessed by a driveway coming off of Maplewood Avenue that is on the right side of the lot. It's sort of an oddly shaped lot, long and skinny, but with some protrusions. 6 units. Each unit will have enough space to park a car, 2 cars in front of the garage. There's a 2-car garage. And then on the southerly end, just before the power line, there is some additional guest parking. And there's also a striped area. Maybe I should point that, if that's appropriate. Yes. Oh, top one, right? Yep. This is the guest parking, and there's also a place for turnaround and delivery vehicles. As you come into the site, you'll notice a retaining wall. This retaining wall has been designed to make up some grade because the property falls away going to the northeast. The design is for a wall that will have 2 separate sections. So there's a shorter wall and then some space and then another wall. And the reason that we did this in this design is to provide a better look to the abutting property. There's an abutting property that has been developed along Maplewood in the front of the property, and we feel it's much nicer to look at a short wall than a landscape buffer and then the other wall, as opposed to having one dominating large wall. So we'll look at the detail later, and I'll show you more information about that. There's some recreational areas depicted on the plans, and I think that covers the site plan. Next sheet. is the landscaping plan. So in your package is landscaping, the entrances, the entrance, it's not working too well, unfortunately. The entrance, you see on the top there along Maplewood Avenue at the entrance, either side is nicely landscaped, providing a nice entry landscaping. In front of each unit, there's landscaping, and then between the units, there'll be larger trees that will help to break up and attenuate some of the desires to hang out. The hangout's going to be in the rear yards and not in the side yards. And then that shows the landscaping between the two retaining walls. The next sheet is the building renderings, so they're similar in architectural appearance. The site slopes, and there's various existing grades. We have to calculate building height based on the lowest of existing grade or proposed grade. So there's two more sheets, I believe, of architectural plans that show each individual building and what the building height is. If you see on the top left, that's an example. So each of the buildings, each of the unit numbers has the height associated, and they all comply with the ordinance. Next slide. This is the grading and drainage plan. So the property slopes from the southwest to the northeast out to Maplewood Avenue. The drainage, the driveway is a consistent slope. It will allow for the drainage to be collected and then brought into an R-tank system, which is a detention type system that is behind Unit 1, and then later, after it's detained to attenuate the peak flow, then it is bled back out to the city's drainage system. In advance of that R-tank system, there's a pre-treatment catch basin that will provide water quality. Each unit will have a drip edge to further enhance water quality infiltration. Next sheet. Utilities will come off of Maplewood. There'll be a sewer line run in the road along with water line and electric line. Each unit has its own service. Those are all detailed, along with the elevations of all the structures in the particular notes. Next sheet shows the driveway profile. It's a pretty consistent, roughly 7% slope coming off of Maplewood Avenue, shows all the structures, and it flattens out at the top for the parking area. Next slide. The next two slides, you can just go 1, 2. These are in your package. They show the average grade plane for each building, and the existing grade is the determinative number. So we've calculated the existing average grade, which then is used to determine the building height. And next plan. And we have the usual detail sheets. So also in your package is the green building statement, preliminary condominium docs, and the condominium docs include a very early and bold reference to the fact that there will be noise from the highway in this situation. We have a photo log and overview of Google Earth. Trip generation analysis. The site is a low generator for early morning peak and 5 p.m. peak hour trips. There's a complete drainage analysis that shows we are not increasing runoff to adjacent properties. In the details, there's a page devoted to the specialty treatment catch basin. The project needed ZBA approval, which it obtained in August of 23 for lot area per dwelling unit and more than one building on a lot. So that variance was obtained. Technical Advisory Committee approval was obtained on January 2nd, subject to the review of the retaining wall as it pertains to the Portsmouth zoning ordinance and definition of structures, and the stormwater being approved by the Department of Public Works. Your staff memo indicates that the TAC conditions have been satisfied, and that concludes the presentation for the site plan portion of the project. We're also here tonight to ask for a conditional use permit as specified and allowed under the Highway Noise Overlay District. In order to present that to you, a study was done by a qualified professional identifying the noise levels associated with the land, and then it looked at the noise levels that would be present when the development occurs. It identified the standards that allow you to approve this and that the project uses to comply with the ordinance. And in the study, the conclusion is that this project will meet the standards, and you would be able to, and we hope you do, grant the Noise Overlay District conditional use permit. And the staff review of that in the staff memo indicates that they agree that the study identified and articulated a response to the necessary items for you to take a vote. If there's any questions for the team, we're here to answer them, and we request that you approve this project.
Questions of the applicant? Just, Greg.
Good evening, John. Thanks for coming. I went out to the site. It's kind of challenging with that grade, but looks like you guys are going to deal with it. Likely fill down there behind those retaining walls, right?
Yes, and maybe if we go back to the site plan set, maybe we should have gone through some of the detail sheets
Show you which one it is. D6.
at the end of the site plan set.
It was really just an observation. The pit.
Sure, yes, yes. There's about an 8-foot maximum fill at the corner.
And you
by
can see
the-
all the water runs right down towards the old electrical building.
Correct.
That's what you're remedying.
Yes, yep.
I saw construction debris. It looks like it used to be a laydown lot for a contractor or something. There was asphalt and other miscellaneous stuff.
Yeah,
around.
there's a couple of miscellaneous leftover piles. So what happened is we were here at the planning board for a project that would have developed the site into a mosque.
I remember that.
And that's why the applicant is ISSA. They got approval, and they were having some funding problems. I won't get into the nature of that, which is religious, but they found another site, and so the site became available. But in the intervening time, the city was doing the Maplewood Avenue reconstruction project. So the contractor for that project reached out, saw this vacant parcel, said, oh, it's perfectly suited, so it was used as a laydown yard.
Good answer. Thank you. Well, last question. The tank storage stormwater system looks interesting. I also live in a PUD. I guess I know that you have a maintenance plan, but it's kind of difficult to ensure that the 6 homeowners are going to actually follow that maintenance plan of that thing. And does it, I saw what's called on the plan, their documentation for the system, an optional outfall pipe. Does that filter and then go into the sewer? Is that what that is?
So here's the picture of the sort of the cross-section of the retaining wall.
Yeah,
how it
yeah.
has a shorter section than the slope, planted section, and then the upper wall, and a security fence, or actually a fence to prevent falls. But our tank system is going to exit back to the street and be hard piped to the city's drainage system. So in this case, and I don't know if that said it in the like usual material, it's not going to daylight. It's going to be run through, detained, and then go back through pipes and connect by hard pipe to the city's system in Maplewood.
So, okay, that's a good answer. But then the about the maintenance of it, is it just you clean the,
Oh,
it
sure,
shows
sure.
you clean like the inlet to it? You
Yeah,
don't
one
have
of
to, you don't
the-
have to pump it like an oil water separator or anything like that? Anything?
So one of the reasons, reasons to have the pretext catch basin is that it stops both floatable matter and particulate matter from getting into the system and clogging it. So that will be maintained, and then there's another sump before the system that will be maintained, and all of that is in the inspection and maintenance plan, which will be required to be submitted to the city, the ongoing maintenance of that, and then that was reviewed by the Department of Public Works, and
Can you attach that maintenance plan to the condo docs so that the
yes, that's a-
potential homeowners know that,
Yes.
you know, you gotta deal with this?
Yep, that's a good point.
You good, Greg?
Yes. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Mr. Shagnon, I'm a little, I guess, concerned because of this big wall and putting all these plants in the middle. Are we going to ensure that those plants aren't going to be, if you put really big trees there who have really big root balls, they're going to grow into the retaining wall and it's not going to last very long? So I guess, can you just promise me those
Sure.
plants are going to?
Yeah, I mean, the planning, the landscape plan was prepared by a professional,
Okay.
and they knew that they had to specify material that would have root penetration that goes down and not out.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to visit the noise analysis. So no direct measurements of traffic noise was made, is that correct? You guys used this sound plan model, computer model instead. Why didn't you just take direct measurements of the noise on 95?
I'm pretty sure that the sound consultant took noise level measurements in doing this work. Unfortunately, he had a prior engagement and could not be here, but I think my understanding is that he started by putting out noise equipment for a period of time.
And the model, if a model is used according to our zoning ordinance, it must be FHWA approved. Is sound plan FHWA approved?
So the computer model sound plan is used to do these studies, okay?
Is it FHWA approved?
It's, the noise study said it was conducted, the calculations were conducted using the required FHWA TNM 2.1 or 2.5 engine. So I would have to say the answer to that is yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then when you turn to the mitigation part of the plan, of the application,
Yep.
you're suggesting that only the front windows of these houses facing 95 need to be any kind of noise mitigating windows? I really don't understand why you wouldn't, if you make a point in the application that windows are the weakest point for noise. So wouldn't you just make all the windows these noise mitigating specialty windows? Why would you just do the front windows?
So if you go back to the noise study, or, I mean, you don't even have to bring it up, but the noise is propagating from the highway going east. The buildings themselves are going to block the noise on the windows that are on the back side of the building. So the study identifies construction techniques to bolster the building's reduction of outside noise, and he identified that there would be a net positive result by putting in specialty windows on the side that is facing the noise generator, but you don't need to put them on the side that is away from the noise generator because it doesn't have the same noise coming at it, and that was his
What about
point.
side windows then, if you're saying that it is mitigated by the actual structure itself?
If we go to page 3 of your noise study, it actually says just before summary that the windows that don't face it are subject to a 20 decibel reduction in noise, and that's why you said it's not necessary. I don't do sound analysis, but that's what's in your report.
Yeah. So,
And how far away from I-95 is the face of those buildings? What's the distance between the periphery of I-95 and those buildings? Because, I mean, we have an ordinance for noise mitigation, and I just think in terms of quality of life, that we should do everything possible to mitigate the noise.
So the photo
Doesn't
exhibit.
look like there's much of a barrier of trees between I-95 and those structures, proposed structures.
So the photo exhibit shows the building locations, it's a scale drawing, and the edge of the highway pavement, and it's about 120 feet.
I know that.
So I can quote the sound engineer, if you, noise is not mitigated by trees efficiently. So it would not be a great benefit to have a large tree buffer.
Right. No, I wasn't suggesting that. I'm pointing out that I think that there will be significant noise. So I'm concerned about that, about a thorough mitigation of that noise.
Well, there will be noise, it will be noted, and there is, under the ordinance, a requirement that you reduce the noise to the interior of the structure to 45 decibels. And the study says that with the techniques available in the construction, that is achievable and will be achieved at the site. So it's meeting the ordinance.
Okay, and then can you just actually show us the 12 parking spaces? Because I see those 3 parking spaces at the very end of the entry road, but I don't know, I looked at the site plan, and I don't literally see the other 9 parking spaces. Are they like inferred in front of the garages? Are those the parking spaces?
So the site architecturals, if you turn to A3, each building has a 2-car garage. So that's 12 spaces. And
Those are
so
the
the
parking
3
spaces. Okay.
guest spaces, which is more than the required, just let me make sure. So the provided parking is 15 spaces. 6 units with 2 each, 3 guest parking spaces. And then it is designed for a 20-foot driveway, so there's extra parking in the driveway. But it's not counted,
Okay,
okay?
yep.
Any other questions of the applicant? Yes, Paul?
Small matter, you're proposing private trash pickup,
Yes.
is that correct? And what does that look like? Is that a dumpster, is that bins?
No, it would, the site is not going to have a dumpster. It would be just like curbside pickup, where on a designated day, the resident would leave the trash at the end of their driveway, and then instead of a city truck coming by to pick up, there would be a private trash hauler that would pick up.
So
Site,
not on Maplewood?
no,
Six-
no. There is some allowance for multi-unit buildings to be provided curbside pickup in that manner by the city, but this exceeds the threshold, so private has to be used.
Okay, thank you.
John, I have a question. You're proposing 6 condominium units. Is there a reason you didn't ask for subdivision approval?
So we're asking for site plan approval to keep it a single lot, make it a condominium. The issue of subdividing it was discussed extensively at the zoning board of adjustment. This zone requires an inordinate, well, no, I won't say it that way. It requires 100 feet of frontage and 15,000 square feet of lot area per lot. And that's the same density requirement. So because the lot's 62,000 square feet, it would support 4 units. and we got approval to build 6
By variance.
by variance. The original ask of the zoning board was 8, with 2 being affordable, but that did not pass.
The concern was frontage?
For
Or you
the
just-
zoning board,
Or, I think by definition, it's a subdivision. I'm not trying to trip up your application.
I think it's actually a PUD versus a subdivision.
If you look at the book you just got, the 67214, by definition, it's a subdivision, but
I saw a reference to a PUD in your packet.
anyway, the intent is to have one ownership, rental units owned by one.
no, it's a condominium. So it meets the definition of subdivision under the state, which is, division of land for sale or lease. So it is essentially a subdivision, but it falls under the City of Portsmouth site plan review. And in that zone, you can have duplexes and single families by right, but if you want to do a multi-unit development, you need a variance, which was obtained. So I think it is a subdivision, yes, but it meets the requirements needed to be approved.
So as 6 units, you could have 6 owners, obviously, as condominiums. then.
Yes, yeah, it's a for-sale condominium, there'll be 6 new property
So
owners.
your position is, even though the state would define it as a subdivision, the city doesn't? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that you, whether you define it as a subdivision or not, it is a subdivision. In your ordinance, you allow for development through site plan review, and that's where we are. So.
Well, usually you get both on a condominium. You get subdivision and site plan. In other locations,
Yes, but that's not been how it's done here, to my knowledge. And you can certainly check in on that, but if it was a subdivision, then you would be expected to see 15,000 square foot lots with 100 feet of frontage.
no, condominium is a subdivision, but did you want to say something?
So there are certain condominiums that can be created that are condominium sites, and that looks more like a subdivision. This is truly no boundaries. I mean, there'll be limited common area, I'm sure, around it, but you can get a true planned unit development that is condoized. Typically, you're talking about condominium sites, so that's why it looks like a subdivision. It's really not. Legally, it's not.
Legally, it is.
Well, that's what I was referring.
14.
Well, I actually live in one, because they're freestanding.
several of them.
They're freestanding structures, so it's a PUD by Portsmouth, and there's common area and limited common area. And
So
there's
in
a-
this particular case, the only area outside of the unit that is limited common is the deck and the patio below it.
So everything else is common.
Everything else is common.
So there's
That
going to
was-
be condo fees for the plowing of the road.
Yep.
And the salting of the road
Landscaping.
and the landscaping, just
Yep.
like my place.
Yep, for everything
Okay.
else.
All right.
And that was definitely, Rick, that was part of the, moving through the process. The technical advisory committee was
It's,
ensured that there wasn't like lines between the buildings that would make it seem like a subdivision.
I'm not going to belabor it. I think it is a subdivision, but I'm not, you've been through TAC, you've done what you've been doing on other projects that are similar. So we'll address it with staff
Yep.
for future projects.
Sure. Yep.
Any other questions of the applicant for either the conditional use permit on sound or the site plan? Yeah, I guess we'll open the public hearing then. Is anybody here or on Zoom who'd like to speak to, for, or against this application? Anybody on Zoom?
If you're on Zoom and would like to speak, please raise your hand. No hands.
One more call. Anybody here or on Zoom who'd like to speak to, for, or against this application? Not, I'm going to close the public hearing. Public hearing's closed.
Okay, since no one else seems to want to talk tonight. I'd make a motion we vote to find the site plan application meets requirements set forth in site plan regulations, section 2.9, evaluation criteria, and adopt the findings of fact as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I will then continue and make a motion to vote to grant, make a motion vote to grant site plan approval with the following conditions, 2.1 through 2.6.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Yes.
I think this is a good use of a difficult area, especially because it has a giant easement that walks right through this. It's got a highway on one side and a giant electrical easement on the other. So I know there's been several things proposed here in this area throughout the years, and I think this also fits with what's on the other side of the easement, which is a single-family neighborhood. So I think putting in these single-family freestanding condominiums fits with the density of the single-family homes behind it. And since no one came and complained about it, I'm guessing they're okay with it. So I think it's a pretty good project. Aye.
Additional comment, actually, yeah, to the south are 4 condos in 2 buildings that are multifamily of similar character, so.
Okay, any other accolades to share with the applicant? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I'll continue to make a motion to vote to find that the conditional use permit application meets the requirements set forth in section 10.674 of the ordinance and adopt the findings of fact as presented.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And
None?
one more. I'll make a motion we vote to grant the conditional use permit as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved.
Thank you. Appreciate your hard work.
Thank you. Are you able to go side by side if we need?
I can do a PDF. Yeah.
Next item on the agenda, we have a series of proposed zoning amendments. These have been noted as zoning map changes, which they are, but they're also, as a part of that, they'd be zoning changes to the districts. As I will read, bear with me.
That's going to be a long list.
Tried to condense it for you.
Amend the zoning map to change the zoning designation to Gateway Neighborhood District G1 as follows from Office Research, map 267 lot 4, map 267 lot 5. All these are 267 lot 6, 7, 8, map 252 lots 1, 2, 1-7, map 233 lot 145, map 234 lot 3, 234 lot 7, 234 lot 2, from Garden Apartment Mobile Home Park, and map 291 lot 1, and map 285 lot 1 from General Business, map 234 lot 7-6, map 234, again, 5, 6, 51, map 174 lot 12, map 174 13, 175 11, 175 4, 175 5, 236 35, 34, 33, we're going down, 36, 39, map 237 lot 56, a portion of that lot, map 237 lot 57 from SRB, map 243 lot 66, map 299 lot 6, map 299 lot 6A, and map 268 lot 97 from mixed residential business, and map 217 lot 1, a portion of that lot, and map 217 lot 2A, a portion of that lot from GRA, map 174 lot 14 from industrial, map 273 lot 5 from industrial and GRA, and map 173 lot 9. Amend the zoning map to change the designation to Gateway Mixed Use G2 from SRB, map 246 lot 1. Amend the zoning map to change zoning designation to Garden Apartment Mobile Home GA/MH as follows from Gateway Neighborhood Business G1 and Office Research or OR map 215 lot 9. And this notice and list of the map changes are proposed pursuant to Chapter 10, Article 4, which also deals with the actual map itself, and the zoning amendments are contained in a different section of the regulation. To help with that alphabet soup, we have images of the different areas, and Peter, if you could just show these for the sake of the public. We'll go through the slides.
Sure, okay, starting in the north of the city, this is, oops, oh, thanks, Kevin.
We broke it.
Don't reboot.
Only he can touch it.
Savior
Right.
came.
This property is office research, and it's Oriental Gardens, and it's proposed to go to, from G1 and OR to Garden Apartment Mobile Home Park, which is a more appropriate zone.
No, it's OR. It's just OR, isn't it?
There's a little piece there.
Oh, a
yeah.
tiny, I missed that one over there, that little tail.
Could you explain how it's more appropriate?
Because OR is a non-conforming zoning, so it's not permitted, the use is not permitted. And
They went to replace a couple of the homes last year, and they couldn't do it without a variance because it's improperly zoned. So this is just making the zoning conform with what's happening out there.
So this new zone is actually where we do have a mobile home park?
Yes.
Okay, very hard to follow. Go ahead.
Do you want to have discussion on each one, or just go through?
Well, if
As
board
needed.
members have discussion, say so now, and then we'll have the public hearing, so we don't have to go back. So any board discussion on the first one?
Yeah.
Everybody, yes, John?
I'd just like to clarify for Jane, yes, this whole property is Oriental Gardens. It's an existing mobile home park. I understand the rest of the property is wetlands and will never be probably developed. So it's just like we're creating zoning to fit what's there now.
I guess my question is about this whole exercise. What is the rationale for rezoning all these little pieces all together at this moment in time?
I would say that a lot of this is cleanup. Some of it is different, but a lot of it's cleanup.
But
Councilor
this
Morales.
is something that's brought to us by the Land Use Committee appointed by the City Council. So I'm trying to understand the process, who's controlled the process, who's designed these pieces for these specific zones. I'm trying to get the background rationale for it.
And
Okay.
I would be happy to give you that. So we started with the thought process of, we were asked to expand the gateway districts. When we originally put the gateway districts in, we put them just one lot deep along the gateway roads. So we were given the exercise of looking at the existing gateway and seeing what made sense to do lots behind existing gateway districts. In the process of doing that, we came across Oriental Gardens being in office research, and that did not make sense in any way, shape, or form, and was difficult for the people who live there, trying to replace some of the, because we've had a couple fires out there, trying to replace their trailers. So we thought while we were in the process of looking at the gateway and expanding it, we might be able to also put this lot in. It might seem like an outlier because we are turning it into Garden Apartment Mobile Home, so that the mobile home park is now conforming. So this was something that we, sometimes you find these things as you're studying the maps and you're going through all these lots, you run into things that just aren't correct, and you have the opportunity to fix them, and it seems like the right idea to do it, so. But that was where we started. We started looking at like 60 properties. This list is about half.
Any other questions on this one? Does that satisfy your question, Jane, on that one?
In general?
The other piece of that is the Land Use Committee was created to, they had 3 tasks, and to increase the housing availability and opportunity. That was, the ADU amendments came through the Land Use Committee, the incentives in the character districts, where we required community space and workforce housing, that came through the Land Use Committee. And the last part of it was looking at expanding the gateway, and so this exercise will allow these parcels to be rezoned to gateway, which will allow for more opportunity for residential development and mixed-use development in a lot of these lots. But this one was an outlier, and wanted to just correct the zoning for Oriental Gardens. The next property is the Rite Aid at Woodbury and Market Street. This is kind of a cleanup because it's really split zone. There are two parcels, and they're split zoned between Gateway 1 and MRB. And so it's cleaning it up, just making them both Gateway 1.
I have a question.
Yep.
So Gateway 1 allows residential.
Excuse me? sir?
Gateway 1 allows residential, correct?
Correct.
Where on that parcel is there room for residential, and why would we put it there?
Well, it also allows commercial, so it's,
Why don't we just leave it commercial?
well, it's currently Gateway 1 and
It
MRB.
says it's,
It's split zone, so
We're
I'm
just
sorry.
filling in the
So
rest
you're
of the
just-
dark
we're,
red.
we're making it all Gateway 1.
Why wouldn't you make it MRB?
There's no other MRB anywhere.
That would be spot zoning.
There is across the street, but,
We're actually looking at that too, because it's a mobile home
right,
park.
right.
That's kind of what I'm wondering, because if you're gonna say. that
Well,
this
MRB
site-
is mixed residential business, so that's residential and business also, so.
I had a hard time finding the actual, I saw the table of allowable uses, but you know how user-friendly that is not. So the definition of what is allowable in plain English in MRB versus G1, and I literally have the zoning ordinance up here and I still can't figure it out.
We had that comparison at the Land Use Committee, and it made sense at the time. I don't remember the detail.
Well, I mean, I've been reading the zoning all day. It's 346 pages. And the 346 pages doesn't explain the difference between them well enough for me to think that we need to make a change. An explanation would be,
It is odd that the
Helpful.
the zone line goes through the building.
Looking back at prior zoning maps, the current Gateway District used to be general business. And then in 2010, the old Gateway was created, and it just took some of the general business districts and made it Gateway. And then in 2017, we had another update where we have Gateway 1 and Gateway 2.
Yep.
And it just changed those. And so this little finger of MRB was always there.
Okay.
And so in 2017, it didn't get incorporated and was left split zoned. So this is a cleanup, really.
well, I get combining the zoning of the two parcels. That makes perfect sense.
It's
but-
one parcel,
Well, but there's that funny little thing on the right.
Two
What's
little-
that mean?
two,
Yeah, yeah.
split through.
It's two parcels.
It's two parcels. So they have two different plot numbers.
Right, but the zoning goes through each of them, so each of them are split zoned.
Okay. What is the actual definition between G1 and MRB?
MRB is zoned to provide areas where a limited range of business establishments, including live-work units, can be located near or adjacent to residential development, providing a transition between residential neighborhoods and commercial districts. That's the definition for MRO, which is mixed residential office and mixed residential business.
Okay?
Gateway 1, the purpose of this district is to facilitate a broad range of housing types together with compatible commercial, fabrication, and civic uses in a high-quality pedestrian environment with moderate to high density. Those are the definitions of the districts.
All right, but, okay, so when you read that, Gateway 1 combines residential and commercial. So it allows both there.
Right.
They both do.
They both do.
They both do.
I get that.
Yep.
But the second one allows residential there now. That's a Rite Aid. It's been there 5 years. It's a commercial parcel. It's obviously a lease building because Rite Aids, they don't own buildings, they lease them, and I know people that own Rite Aid buildings. You're suggesting that someday this is going to possibly be torn down and allow residential on that corner?
That would be an option, or it would be another commercial use, or it could be a mixed-use building. I mean,
If it gets redeveloped, it could be redeveloped under one zoning as opposed to having to deal with a
with being
zone
split.
line
yeah.
going through the parcels. So what's the, I mean, if you're troubled by this and the board is troubled by this, we can skip it and go on to the next one.
If this is going to be consistent through all these parcels, I'm going to have the same question, because you're not going to take the National Guard Armory that was just built on Route 1 down by my house and turn it into residential. No friggin' way, never, and it's in here.
One turned into a library.
Yep.
Yes, Bill?
Could I ask the question in a little different way? I'm the fairly new guy here, so I've spent a lot of time trying to understand the past master plans and what belongs in a master plan, and the sequence of doing a master plan and then doing zoning as a result of the master plan and capital budgets following, so that you're doing things in kind of a strategic fashion. And it doesn't seem like we're doing that. The kind of a corollary to that is that I would think the gateway sectors have grown out of maybe a 10-year period, and now we're enlarging them. And my question would be, did we establish any evaluation criteria when these zones were established to be able to judge whether they're serving the purpose? And think about them in terms not only of trying to find more homes, more places for housing, which I'm fully supportive, but what does it do to infrastructure, water, sewer? What's it do to transportation? What does it have an impact on business development in the city if we're taking areas that used to be business and now saying they're partly residential? So I guess it's a two-part question. Is one, why doesn't this follow a master plan? And are there any evaluation criteria that are kind of holistic that indicate that this is that we're following this path in the right way?
Well, the existing zoning does follow the existing master plan. That's what it was based out. That's the genesis of the existing zoning, that this is being looked at and rezoned under.
But one that was 7 years ago.
I think it's called the 2025, but yeah, about 7 years ago. So it's not inconsistent with law or anything like that.
Right.
We are just about we're on the cusp of starting our new master plan update. Obviously, let's talk about that a little bit later tonight. But Greg, you have a question?
Comment. I agree with what Bill said 100%. If we go to the very next slide, I'm going to waste 10 minutes of everybody's time on why the heck we would zone car dealerships G1 on the Spalding Turnpike. And my suggestion is we just shelf this thing and have a work session so you can explain, somebody can explain to us why we want to allow residential all along the right side of the Spalding Turnpike from the traffic circle all the way up to Home Depot. That's absurd.
Well, I think if we can just say you disagree with it, that might work, as opposed to saying it's absurd, because it has been thought about. So
Not by us.
that doesn't make it absurd by,
But this is too big of a package for us to review tonight and
That's-
actually
that's-
have, so I move that we table this until we have a work session.
Second.
Just, you want,
No,
you want to
that's my
explain?
motion.
Do you want to explain it?
Now I can explain it. We received this 6 days ago. This is an inordinate amount of information with no background and no explanation. It's hard enough to even go through the zoning and figure this out, but we're looking at the 90% of these parcels, including Water Country and the National Guard Armory building that was just built 5 years ago, being changed into residential allowable. And you could take at least 50% of these and say, no way. They're on a highway. Both of them, all of them. So putting residential along a highway is a much longer process than shoving this in front of us and say, let's send it for approval in the March meeting, which is exactly what the staff memo says. Move for approve for March. No way. That's my story.
Jane?
I'd just like to add to the discussion that was my original question about the process here and what this is emanating from and who we are. Who are we who are deciding this? Because I think it's even beyond the planning board. I really agree with Bill. I think a vision of this nature going up and down like Route 16 and Route 1 is a vision for the city, how the city wants to be built out, in what ways, and I think it is part of a master planning process. So I agree that we should have a special work session, whatever. But actually, I think that the average taxpayer should be involved in seeing at this point what the vision for future development, the allowances for future development, what's being laid down here. It is as if we are rezoning prior to actually having the vision through a master planning process.
So back in 2016, the city passed a housing policy that came out of a housing committee who did a lot of the background work that actually then created the gateway districts. And Gateway 1 and 2 were a creation of that. And there was years of work put into doing those. We've now been able to actually watch over the last 5 or 6 years since they've been enacted. And we've actually, and the purpose of doing those was to have more mixed business and residential and to be able to have more communities. Southgate Plaza, which is now at Portsmouth Green, West End Yards. We have now these places where there's business and there's residential. And those are getting, and they're even giving us some of the workforce housing units that we're looking for. So what this practice was to look at expanding the lots that we had originally tested this on to the next lots. So it's not like this was willy-nilly. This was something that was thought out when it was originally created, and as you see, it actually taking flight and actually making sense. We are also looking at the reason why some of these general business was a district that was mostly our downtown, and when we moved to character districts, we found out as we were doing this exercise, there's not very much general business districts left, right? So could we actually make our zoning ordinance slightly smaller by starting to synthesize general business into Gateway? And that way we don't have those extra ones. Gateway, we looked at it side by side, and everything you can do in general business, you can do in Gateway. So it was the point of making sure that we make things more conforming and not less conforming and try to simplify what we have out there.
Comment, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Please tell me where one workforce housing unit has been built in the last 10 years.
West End Yards.
West End Yards has 27.
Why don't we, as everybody's saying, in the master plan, come up with a new zone where there's incentives for more? That's the only one. Every single CUP that's come to us and asked for workforce housing has imploded. It's a sham, because there's only 2 ways to get it. And this is overreaching, and again, I made my motion and I have a second, so I'd like to call for a vote.
We have a roll call vote, Mr. Chair.
And we said we'd listen to the public tonight.
Yeah, it's,
I'll withdraw my motion until after the public hearing.
Have some additional discussion?
excuse me?
Can I have some additional discussion?
Yes.
I share Mr. Mahana's thoughts, pretty much 100%. And I have a couple concerns too. We're being asked also to modify what we presented to include map 236, lot 26. And to my knowledge, that's not even in the packet. I couldn't find it. And also map 174, lot 13. So we've been asked to improve those, and they're not even in, I don't even know where they are. And my other concern is, have the property owners been notified about these zoning changes?
They have.
All right, and the abutters or just the property owners?
Just the property owners,
Okay, so certified mail or something like that?
first class mail.
Okay. Then I guess that's my two concerns.
Joe?
Given that we knew we had a light agenda tonight as well, I thought it was
I was in agreement that this was a wonderful opportunity to actually hear the presentation rather than, kick it down the road. I think that this board is intelligent enough to hear it and make recommendations on each parcel, but we've wasted quite a bit of time, I think, suspecting that there's some kind of inefficiency here, when I'd like to just hear more about each site and why, rather than throw it out and kick it down the road. I mean, I'm not a fan of more and more and more work sessions. I'm a fan of the board getting more efficient and intelligent about addressing these and not arguing them.
Well, one quick question that came up, and it's reminding me, retail sales are special exception in the RRB district, but they're permitted in the gateway districts. So, back to the Rite Aid site, I think that's why the logic was to flip it and make it all gateway, because why have to have a special exception for a strip if you wanted to expand that retail use?
I just,
Bill?
So rather than 30 individual items, is there an overarching strategy that's been articulated? And is there any data that shows that what we've done suggests that this, doing this to another 30 parcels will further that goal?
I think that was explained by Councilor Moreau, and the one that it didn't fit that, I think it's the only one, there might be one other one that didn't fit that particular agenda, was the mobile home park, the first one. That was one, when you're looking at a map and going, wait a minute, and we remembered that some of the owners had to seek variances to replace their existing homes because they're non-conforming.
I agree, that one makes 100% sense.
I also want to point members to, had they read their packets, I'm not saying people didn't, but there's a very detailed explanation and background as to what these are meant to, what we're doing here, what they're meant to achieve. And it was publicly, obviously, presented, and it's been on the in the packet.
Okay, let's get through the slides because we have to do that to have the public hearing, and then we'll come back to motion.
The next slide is the roundabout diner and Holiday Inn. And Mr. Hewitt, this is one of those parcels, did you say 175.5?
I think we were on Rite Aid last. The next slide is the corridor along the Spalding Turnpike, or Route 1 bypass.
All right, are we still on this one?
Mr. Stith, the two lots I couldn't locate that are in your planning department recommendation 1.2.
Yep.
I could not find a map for 23626, and I could not find a map 174 lot 13.
174.
Is that in the notice, Jim? Because it's, even though I
it's
read
right
it.
here. 17413 is right there. It's the,
Yep.
it's the place where those billboards are at the end of Boyd Road.
Is it on one of these slides?
Yes, it is.
Yep, it's on the traffic circle one. I'll find the other one. I'll look for
The
it.
bottom corner, Counselor,
I see
abutting
12.
Center Street.
I see 17412. I don't see 13.
13 is just north of it. The
7413.
triangular, there's the small GRA, and then there's the GB
Yep.
piece. That's 13.
Bottom of Garden Street.
The point is they're there.
26.
So it's on map 5?
The traffic circle one, but I don't see numbers.
Page 213.
Okay, I
if you-
see it. Yep. I see it. It's just south of Boyd Road. I'm sorry.
Yep,
All
it's a
right.
parking lot right now.
Yep. Got it. How about 23626?
I'm looking, give me a minute.
In the meantime, the image is on the screen. Are we in the middle of explaining the logic behind this change, or are we?
Please.
Actually.
Yep. So
Sorry.
this is the strip along Spalding Turnpike. There's Gateway to the north of it, and they would expand that district. The northern lot, I think, is a 4 or 6 unit apartment building. That's in the general business. That's non-conforming. Again, this would make it G1, which is mixed use, so commercial or residential.
So the intent there is to make that conforming.
Mr. Hewitt, I think that 26 should be 36, and it's on this map that I'm showing. There's a small sliver between the Nissan dealership and the 2 lots that are on Farm Lane.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
So that, in the memo, it should be 236-36.
Okay.
Two 3636 is in the notice.
Right.
Okay, good.
Those are the two you had, Jim?
Yes, those are the two, well, right, that I couldn't locate, but if 26 is supposed to be 36, then that answers that.
That would make a difference, wouldn't it?
Tiny little sliver.
This slide is the roundabout in Holiday Inn. And they're currently zoned general business and would go to Gateway 1. Just sit,
I'm sorry, should we pause on each one?
Sure,
To
if-
discuss them before we move on, just so we don't have to come back to them?
Yeah, like I said we were doing,
I don't hear
and
anything.
then I stopped.
That's okay.
Thank you.
sure.
Just trying to be efficient. In the previous slide, we moved away from, I think we should comment on it and talk
Sure.
about.
We had one negative comment. Any other comments?
One thing I like about it is that the small lot at the very top that you mentioned, where there's an existing condition that's there, and we're making that conforming.
That makes 100%
Correct?
sense.
Okay, good. There's something to work from. And moving down, the logic of the 0056. This is the site that has the marine business on it.
Correct.
This would allow what now?
The big change is that it would allow the opportunity for residential in the general, and we're currently in the general business that the residential is not permitted. So,
And I don't know how you do it because of the wetlands, but
Right.
big box is permitted with a special exception today, and that would not. If it's-
But that's where we're going with this whole thing. I mean, residential, we just saw a unique crafty use of a weird parcel turned into residential, but you don't have frontage. You can't come out onto the Spalding. You don't have frontage on any other road. You've got the noise ordinance issue, and that's just a crazy place to put residential. I guess that's my point.
Okay. Any other comments on this one?
I struggle with this one more than the Rite Aid.
It's a tough
This was
strip of
about
land.
getting rid of general business. And because all the businesses that are allowed in general business are in Gateway, it allows it to keep going without having to keep yet another separate business district.
Well, with all those challenges, I mean, it would allow someone to try, right? It would allow someone to try to, they would have to, all those challenges would still exist, the frontage, the noise, but they would have to be
Right.
addressed. They couldn't do it in a vacuum.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Wasn't there a project 7 or 8 years ago to try to put residential in this area, and it would caused a tremendous hue and cry?
It did.
I don't remember.
Yes.
Yeah, there
It did.
was. Yeah, there was.
They were worried about the buffer, those pine trees coming down.
Yep.
Yeah, tremendous opposition to changing that area from business.
Business uses would continue to be allowed, but like I said, one change would be big box businesses wouldn't be allowed. But, you know, it's a tough strip, no question. Any others on this one? Not, we're not finished with these. We have to do a public hearing. We're going to come back and talk about them, but I think we need to
I don't remember I do recall that. I don't remember what the exact challenges were of that, but if someone were to come along and truly be able to produce affordable housing here that satisfied the neighborhood and satisfied us and the city, giving them a shot at it, I think, is reasonable, that's all. We all come here every month talking about the problems of affordable housing here, and I think we're looking for ways to try to make it more possible.
It's an opportunity, perhaps, or
Yeah,
a
it's not
small
a it's not a
opportunity, but,
guarantee, but it's.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this is the roundabout and the Holiday Inn adjacent to it. And then the Holiday Inn has a small parcel, it's like their lawn area, that's a separate parcel.
I believe there's
Question.
actually a single-family home on that parcel.
Many years ago.
Yeah.
I think it's vacant right now.
Yeah. Well, here, right here.
Any questions on this one?
There is a house there.
Next.
Moving down, this is the current corner of Boyd and Route 1 bypass, and across it from, so I'll stay on that side of the street. Below that is the dental office that was in the GRA. They got a variance to have that business there. The proposal is to make that G1. Across Cottage Street is a car dealership that is split zoned industrial and GRA. And so making that G1 would extend the corridor, because then when you get across to the U-Haul and Weston Yards, that's the G1 district there. Across the street, these 4 general business districts parcels would go to G1. There's a hotel, 2 hotels, and then a business, and then the car dealership.
So, I'm sorry, just for clarity.
I'll just do those for now because the bottom ones are on the next slide. Go ahead.
Yep. So just so you can repeat, are we saying that the car dealership is currently zoned industrial? Is that?
The Holloway,
No, the Holloway
the
is.
Cadillac
Yes,
dealership.
yes.
With the Key Auto Group
Okay.
is currently zoned
All right.
general business.
Okay.
Right, it's zoned industrial, and then there's a little corner of it that's zoned GRA. Do you see right up
I
below
see
the
it,
C
yeah.
in Cottage?
Does, going from industrial to, is this not downzoning that, is it? Is that
No, not to G1.
No.
G1?
Light
Okay.
industrial is still allowed in G1.
Got it. Yeah, I see it now. Thank you.
Any other questions on this one? Next.
So just below Borthwick Avenue, there are 3 parcels. And then there's also one that was included that actually the city owns. So it was zoned office research, and we found out that the city owns it. So
Yeah. We'll make it
we've already changed it to municipal. So that's the recommendation, is to leave that one alone.
Excuse me, I have a comment on this one.
Okay.
These 3 parcels are owned by Public Service New Hampshire Eversource, and they're essentially, the 3 combined are about 95% wetlands. So I'm not sure what changing the zoning will do to this, so, because they're unbuildable. So I'm not sure what we're trying to accomplish here with the rezoning.
Makes it more uniform down the road. If we're,
With accomplishing 0.
you never know what's going to happen in the future.
It's wet.
Well, most of it's wet. There's a little bit of it that's dry.
There's actually there's buildings on it, actually.
There are buildings on it.
Yeah.
It seems like this has more of a optics agenda than practicality.
Well, if you combine a zoning problem with a wetlands problem, you get more of a problem than just a wetlands problem. Yes, Jane?
Well, as was pointed out, we have 2 paragraphs of extensive background on why this is being done in our packets. And when I look at it and I look at it again, to me, it's saying the goal is to create more opportunities for housing development coming right out of the background. So it doesn't seem to me like that goal is being applied uniformly across all of these rezoning changes. Sometimes it's to conform to what the usage already is. Sometimes it's because you never know what's going to happen in the future. I mean, if the purpose of this is to create more opportunities for housing development, then I think we should look at those rezoning changes proposed here that do just that and nothing else. Because I think we're mixing a lot together. We're mixing multiple goals together when only one is really stated. And I think that's partially why I really am confused about this exercise, especially given that we really have had 6 days to look at it without the benefit of this map that we were given, like, at the beginning of this meeting. So it's just lengthy, map this, lot that, being changed from this to that. It is a very, very, very difficult to review, to do it well, to do it meticulously, to know what we're voting on, to make a decision. So I'm back to that. I don't understand why we are rezoning wetlands. They do not create more opportunities for housing development. And so I think I'm against anything that isn't about doing specifically that, that's demonstrable.
Okay, that's a general comment, I think relating to pretty much all of them, but let's get through the slides, have the public hearing, and then come back. Any other comments on this one? Next.
Next, we have 3 properties off of Greenleaf Avenue. The Crossroads House is adjacent to Gateway 1 and is currently in the single residence B. And then there are 2
Is that Crossroads?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know it was actually there.
There are 2 properties adjacent to the high school property off of Ledgewood. One is a dental office, and one is owned by the Greek Church. They've shown an interest in trying to provide housing on this property, and it's currently single residence B. So those are the 3 on this slide.
Yes.
I particularly like this slide based on what Jane is saying. I mean, when I look at this slide, I can't imagine why we wouldn't want to encourage housing on all of these parcels that are being proposed. I think it makes great sense. I mean, I don't see a question on this slide at all about that.
Joe, I would actually agree with you.
Yeah.
And this is.
We agree often, it's okay.
I'm gracious when I agree with you. This is a good cleanup, and it's consistent,
Yeah.
because you can see all the red, and you see these 3 little orphans.
Yeah.
And making those 3 little orphans red, that's consistency, and it makes sense. And none of those parcels are fronted on a highway.
Okay,
This is good.
next.
The next property is the church across from Morona Road. It abuts the Urban Forestry Center around it, and across the street is Gateway 2. So this was the only property that was proposed to be rezoned to Gateway 2. All the others were Gateway 1, and this is currently single residence B.
And I know I read the difference between Gateway 1 and Gateway 2, but you could highlight.
I mean, it's
Slightly less intensive.
slightly less intense.
Okay.
They're pretty much identical.
But now, let me ask you this. Permitted uses where churches are already allow residential, correct?
Well, single residence B allows 1 dwelling unit per lot.
Okay,
So
all right. Back with you.
What you're talking about is if it remains the property of the church.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Because we've seen that
Right.
scenario.
Right.
Thank you.
Excuse me, but this church has a daycare business.
It does, to the south.
So they are currently out of compliance with what they're zoned for?
Daycare is allowed in every zone, correct?
This will actually make them conforming.
I didn't know that. Is that
I
right?
believe it is, but I just want to check.
What did you say?
I may be wrong, but I thought daycare is allowed in every zone.
It depends on the size for single residence.
Yeah, it's definitely allowed in residential. I agree with you, Karen. Daycares are allowed in residential. But I don't know where else.
It wouldn't make it more non-conforming.
True.
Okay, the next slide is from just south of the Market Basket Plaza on Lafayette Road to Campus Drive. There are 7 properties. Most of them, there's a Service Credit Union, dental office, Atlantic Orthopedics. Eversource is the first property. And these are all currently OR, Office Research.
And they're outliers as OR because there's no OR around them.
But, my comment would be, these are all recent buildings. They're on a busy highway, which is going to turn into a 4-lane highway according to DOT, whether it happens or not. And are we going to count their frontage on that back alley? No, their frontage is on Route 1, so a divided highway. I'm not seeing it, but that's, we've repeated that, sorry.
What about the example, just out of view here, of the recent development?
West End Yards?
No, Westerly.
Westerly?
Yeah.
I'm the abutter.
Yeah,
I worked with the whole thing.
Okay.
That was a church property.
yeah.
And
Well, that's-
residential
that's
was
right.
allowed in a church property.
okay.
So it wasn't a massive change. It was just a change in density, because I actually went to all the hearings and I worked with Eric Katz through the whole thing, because I am the president of the homeowners association on the east side.
I think Joe's point is it's in keeping with the
It
neighborhood.
just seems like a
and-
pleasant residential development on Lafayette. That's what I'm getting at, is that seeing more of that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, in my opinion, but my opinion isn't what matters here. I'm just.
It's unusual to have zone change across the street. You should have zone changes across the back lot line. So that was the other reason for it.
Yep.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
This is just an opportunity because this is so many properties and they're all contiguous. It just strikes me like why, for me, it should be part of the master plan, because it seems like we're so focused on changing all our zones to residential. Are we going to have any land left for other uses? It seems there has to be a balance when we rezone things like this, so we're not going too far into turning our whole city into a giant, 100% bedrooms, and we don't have any commercial land left for stores or shops or businesses.
The services that are required by residential.
So Office Research and Gateway 1 have the same uses. The only difference is that Office Research allows a hospital.
But again, that's just my general
Right.
comment. I just feel that this is a major rezoning effort, and I think it needs to be balanced with all the needs of a city and how they use their land.
I hear your point. You should keep in mind that a master plan will make overview policy recommendations, and then the actual implementation of a parcel by parcel and area by area zoning is done what we're doing right now. And of course, we only make a recommendation to council. So council can seek to do this without a positive recommendation or even a negative recommendation from the planning board, but
But if this were in a master plan process and you ask the business collaborative what they think about this overall perspective, we may or may not agree with them, but it's a perspective that should be part of the process.
Absolutely. And I would suggest Atlantic Orthopedic that just spent tens of millions of dollars putting up a surgical center because of the access for the residents. It's a wonderful place. I've been there for many things, and it's appropriately sited on Route 1.
This isn't requiring any change to something like that.
But allowing residential along there is a fundamental change of what is on a state road.
That's a good example so I know that building well, I've been there as well. Imagine if there was a level of residential above that building right now, and there just happened to be apartments up there.
Yeah, I don't see that.
There's a good example of that in Dover.
Yeah.
There are viable examples. Why don't we just keep going?
Yeah,
Mr.
I
Chair?
mean, that's what the Gateway is about, mixed use. Any other comments on this slide? Next.
The next slide, so in the top right are those parcels we just looked at. Across the street is the Westerly, so that is single residence B. There are two 24-unit buildings, I think, that got variances for that density.
Right here.
So that's proposed to go to Gateway 1. And then Water Country is currently split zoned. The frontage is Gateway 1, and the back of it is industrial. And the proposal is just to make it all Gateway 1. So really just on this slide, those two parcels.
And Peter, just to confirm, the Water Country parcel is just one big parcel,
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
But the zoning line must run
Right.
through it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just cuts through it. Kind of.
Any comments on this one?
It's like the biggest undeveloped parcel in town.
Underdeveloped.
Good word, thank you. Sorry.
This has a parcel that's single residence B,
Right.
T1.
I don't even understand the
This-
business model.
I haven't seen that.
Can you imagine
It
what
has
their
48
electric bill is
units
for the
on
water
it.
pumps?
Yeah. Do you have the map up?
Yeah,
It's in the, do you see where Pheasant Lane is on the right?
yeah,
It's just above that.
It's right here.
There's,
but I hadn't seen that on any of the other slides, single residence B to G1.
well, so there were on the,
Right across
Would
from
there be?
McDonald's. This one.
so, yep. And then these three. There were three others, a couple slides before that.
Yep. The one off Greenleaf Ave was also SRB.
And the last slide is, so Service Credit Union down on Lafayette Road and Ocean Road, their main parcel where their building is Gateway 1. They own a parcel behind it that is Garden Apartment Mobile Home. The proposal is to just make that Gateway 1. And then across the street, the frontage of Freedom Circle, just kind of coming across where the existing Gateway line is, so the front of that property, I think it would be a couple acres, would be Gateway 1.
Jim and then Bill.
I think I have the biggest problem with this property. It's currently garden apartment mobile home, meaning that the zoning is baked in for affordable housing. I don't think there's a piece of land left in Portsmouth that hasn't been developed for mobile home. And so why would we even touch this? This is a perfect piece of property to leave alone so that maybe a mobile home park can go in there.
Which is adjacent to it to the south.
If we do anything else to it, we're going to make it less affordable.
You get your point.
That's it.
That was my point.
I mean, it's all manufactured housing directly to the south.
That's a good question.
Allowing it to expand into that would be a touchdown.
Okay, good point. Good catch. Any comments on this one? I'm going to open up the public hearing. So, folks, if you need a particular map brought up to point to it, don't touch the screen. We're going to keep notes from any comments that come in, either people in the room or in Zoom. And then when we do our deliberations, we'll go through your comments at that time. So I'm going to open the public hearing now for these proposed zoning amendments. Is where anybody knows, name and address, and proceed.
Do I have 3 minutes or a half hour? hold on. Tony Coviello, I live at 341 Dennett Street. I have a thing I want to get through that I want to say to you about this in general, but I want to respond to some of the comments that were made prior to that. It's going to be a little sporadic because I'm just going by memory of the comments that were made. I'll go backwards. The mobile home park that was mentioned is currently being zoned. One of the parts that I want to talk about is I think we really need to value the land we have. We're very limited. I think we're 4 square miles, 4x4 in the city. And so I think if we're looking at affordable housing, the idea of putting single units on parcels of land is not the most efficient use of that land. So I take exception to the comment that that land is best suited for a mobile home park. I say multifamily housing, vertical, would be probably cheaper housing and more people on a very limited resource of land. Some other comments that I want to talk to, the Route 16, Route 4, the limited, why change that property, that single sliver? I've worked on properties on the Cape where small businesses are trying to get started, so they've done a single-family home, single-family residence would be apartment, usually on a second or third floor, inside of a business. So, folks that want to start a lawn mowing business and they can't afford, a place to live. They want to live near in their facility. Now, inspection might have a problem with mixing combustible materials and all that, but those things can be achieved with proper construction. And so I just think there's creative people out there that are thinking differently than the folks that are on this board, and tying them because you don't have that creativity is not fair. We've got to let people have the ability to come in and look at these things. There's really good ideas that are out there that maybe you haven't seen before. I do know that the federal government and the Army Reserves are looking at all their facilities, and they're consolidating and closing some that are recently built more recent than the ones on Lafayette Road. So the idea that that is not going to get closed down is probably, you just don't know. They're consolidating those, so it could very well be put on the market. And to think that it isn't, it will never be, is not the way we should be looking at zoning. We should be looking at 10, 20, 30 years. We talked about car dealerships. I heard comments on that. The trends that we're seeing, I'm an engineer, I'm a civil engineer, structural engineer by training, but I've gone into kind of more land development side. We're seeing car dealerships now being looked at. It's probably going to be, you walk into a showroom, there's going to be 3 cars, you're going to order your car, and it's going to show up, a week or 2 from the day you order. You're not going to be having these vast fields of cars. So you need to start changing your zoning now to appreciate that. So changing that to a use that's possible here makes a lot of sense to me. And so I heard a lot of the criticism on each one of these things, the different things, and I can think of reasons that you might want to still consider them. The idea of waiting for a master plan that occurs every 10 years, you're moving too slow. If that's what we have a problem now for housing, to wait for that process to go through so we can provide housing for our workers or my kids who are going to be looking for housing recently, it's just too slow. We need to react faster than that, and I think that's what when the mayor gave his inaugural speech, that's what kind of inspired me to come here today, is I've been thinking about this, and now I'm going to get into the portion where I really wanted to talk about, is I don't think you're going far enough in your zoning if you're really trying to find housing. Oh, we go back a little bit. There was a part about wetlands, and they said, well, you're never going to develop this. This is all wetlands. There's the ability to get a conditional use permit. There's the ability to do off-site improvements elsewhere. There's different values of wetlands. So maybe that wetland isn't very high valued, but there might be one that you can improve across the street. So there's options there. But getting back to providing a lot more affordable housing is I don't think we go enough. And I'm going to use the project that's coming up next as an example. I admire the developer who's coming forward, 100 Durgan Lane, 17 buildings, I think, and 360 units. We've had developers look at that with the current zoning, and they couldn't make it to work. So I'm glad that you found somebody to make it work. But I think it's a lost opportunity in that area and then other areas around the city. We have to start thinking vertically. That lot could, if you put a 10-story building on that lot, you would have naturally affordable housing. Probably wouldn't even need to have government intervention in the land rights. You would just be able to put enough density there. It would take up less land space. The top of that building would probably be lower than Lonza. And you are on a major highway, public transportation. You're right next to, as the things that they're advertising about their project now, you're next to a bike path just a mile away. So I think you're really missing an opportunity to provide far more density, and thinking in the horizontal plane that you are with your 3- and 4-story limits is archaic. It's detrimental. I think your number one concern as the planning board should be protect the core. I mean, we all know the downtown, that's the jewel of the city. That's the thing that drives a lot of economic muscle to the city. And so I think, a lot of these things are far away from the core, so you've done that. Next is to build community. You did that at West End Yard. Some people don't like the look of it, but I think it's a nice little small community. I go down there sometimes, and I go to the restaurants there. And then the third is, I think you have to look at really valuing that land. I don't think you're valuing the land when you're doing with these archaic zoning ordinances where you can you can do 3 stories with 24 units, or you can get to 4 stories with 32 if you provide a small portion of workforce housing. I don't think that's enough. That's not going to solve the problem. We really need to add a tremendous amount more housing, and we just have so little acreage left. And my last point being is that if you think of all these areas, you mentioned I mentioned 100 Durgan Lane, which is already zoned gateway, but if you think about Water Country, if you start in reverse, where if you change the zoning, allowing your current zoning, which is 3 or 4 stories, a developer is going to come in and they're going to put 3 or 4 stories. And then when you finally get to the idea of hey, maybe we should go vertical, it's going to be too late, because those folks in a 3 or 4 story building aren't going to want to be next to an 8-story or 10-story building. So I think a lot of you have a unique opportunity here where you have properties that aren't adjacent to existing single-family homes, existing 2 or 3-story buildings. They're blank canvases scattered around the city that really give you the chance to go vertical and make an impact on what the city needs. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for serving.
Thank you. Anybody else here or on Zoom who wants to speak to, for, or against these proposed amendments?
Good evening, Elizabeth Bradder, property owner, 159 McDonough Street. Hopefully you're passing out, there's 2 things in here. One is a beautiful thing, I believe Ms. Moreau made it, and it tells you where these things are located. I highlighted the ones that are on the list. I think we started with 60, but now we're down to 43, if I did the math right. And that actually shows you where those buildings are. I found the numbers were very difficult to look up, and what I think is important to look at is what are these things next to. So the Water Country thing is an easy example right here. It's in front of us. If you notice behind it and next to it is all industrial, or whatever the purple represents. So in my mind, I would keep that all the same color as it is, because you want to remember about what's next to it. The Rite Aid is another one to think about. So what's next to Rite Aid is SRB. There's 3 or 4 houses literally right next to that, and across the street is the new little modular home thing, and then there's a couple of small businesses that have houses on top. So I think it would be very helpful for all of you to get a copy. I tried to get into the Land Use Committee meeting, the paper that was passed out that Ms. Moreau did tons of work on, and she has a wonderful thing that tells you everything that's allowed. So to me, when you're looking at Gateway 1 versus Gateway 2, the significant difference to me is that Gateway 2 is the lesser of the 2. I assumed always Gateway 1 was, but when I looked through all the uses, Gateway 2 is actually the lesser. And one of the significant differences is that Gateway 2, unlike mixed-use Gateway 1, yes, Gateway 1, unlike MRB, which is mixed residential, allows for a nightclub up to 250 people. So if that Gateway 1 is right next to SRB or something like that, you want to keep that in mind. So I'm all about development, if it's done, keeping in mind what's next to it, and that's what's really important. I also included this kind of interesting thing, which I think you should keep in mind as well. One of the things we always talk about here is green space. And a lot of the developers include green space in their lots. I think the 360 units has a lot of green space in it. They have to make up for a lot of impervious surface. But the gateway standard of development says that open space minimum is 20%, except for commercial development, which is 10%. So if you look at the list I gave you, it has on the front and on the back, what are the open space requirements? So if you look at GAMH, that's 50%. SRB is 40%. MRB is 25%. So OR is actually 30%. So when I think about, I don't know what the glass, I call it the glass building, the glass bank on Lafayette Road, I don't know what they're zoned, but they have behind their building, they have a parking lot that has been made tremendously, has a huge, tremendous green space in the back. And in the front, they have lawn, which the geese love. But in the back, their parking lot includes tons of open space. You can go back there and walk, although I'm sure I was trespassing while I was using their sidewalks. But I think it is worth it to think about those things when we look at G1 and G2 as opposed to MRB and business district and stuff like that. We have a lot of people living here already. The 360 units that are proposed, those will impact the schools if families move into them. So that it's a big picture. So I would love to see you postpone this and do a workshop, and maybe the information from the Land Use Committee could be shared so that people can look at it beforehand, so that you really have an idea of comparing apples to apples as opposed to apples and oranges, which seems to be difficult. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are we able to bring anybody in on Zoom?
In a moment.
I still have it on here.
Okay. Is anybody in the room who would like to speak to, for, again? Okay. That'll be easier than what's happening over there.
Good evening. David Weed, 3003 Lafayette Road, owner-member, Service Credit Union. I want to thank you for your great work tonight. There's certainly a lot of things to consider, but I also want to remind you of the stakes that we have today, with particularly the housing crisis. And I want to echo the gentleman who started this session's words, who said there are creative solutions to these dilemmas. Today, we have approximately 60,000 units, housing units, which are in deficit, that are needed to satisfy the demand. Currently, there's approximately 1,000 units on the market. So you can see what a generational gap this is, and the great need that we will have to have and satisfy in order to address it. It not only matters for our next generation, but it matters also for our schools and the communities we live in. I think I have been involved with 2 different housing organizations who have developed over 2,000 units over the last 10 years. And we work collaboratively with other municipalities in order to address concerns and build safe, affordable housing. Second of all, I've financed mixed-use commercial throughout urban areas in New Hampshire and as well bordering states. And again, through thoughtful processes, planning, there are solutions. And I encourage you folks to consider everybody's comments here tonight, and as well, put in the hard work, because it is worth it. Thank you.
Thank you. You had your hand up? The woman beside you?
Yes.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just thought you wanted to speak.
Yes, hello, good evening. My name is Christine Wellington, and I'm a loan officer at Service Credit Union. I work with David, and I am just asking you to please consider this year, 2024, is the year of housing. We need so many more units. There's normal people that are personally affected. Older folks are looking to downsize, but there's nothing to buy. Younger renters want to become homeowners, but there's nothing to buy. Supply is not meeting demands. Affordability is at an all-time low. Every single day I'm helping people get pre-qualified, but there's just nowhere to buy. So I was listening to the comments tonight, listening to the board, and I just really hope that you can consider some of these opportunities out there for affordable housing, because we really are in crisis. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents to that, and I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room or on Zoom?
No hands have been raised on Zoom.
Last call for anybody here or on Zoom. I'm going to close the public hearing. We have a postponed motion, I think, that dealt with everything, but then I heard maybe some changes and some are okay. How do we want to go through this? You want to go through the ones
If
that...
I could withdraw my motion, or amend my motion, which is ever more convenient.
And your
for the
motion
chair.
would be good, too. You can withdraw that.
Yeah, that, both. So I'll withdraw the first one, if you allow me to make a second.
You may.
I move to continue this action until we have had the opportunity to have a work session to review and approve each parcel individually.
Second.
And so I understand this is a motion to postpone all of them.
Correct.
Okay. Would you like to explain it any further?
I would love to explain. So I find it interesting that we actually were presented better material from a thoughtful resident than we were presented by staff. In other words, we were given a bunch of gibberish here and 2 paragraphs that we need to do this with no technical explanation, and we would like technical explanation. This is exactly my reason that I'd like us to have the ability to discuss each one of these parcels individually. There were several here that I agreed with, but I don't want to make a motion to carve up however many numbers of these and approve them hodgepodge tonight either, because I really don't know anything about these parcels, and this is pretty cool. This tells me not only what's allowable in each one, and all this, but I didn't have the time to go through 340 pages of zoning to pull this out myself. We're volunteers. If the staff would have given me this, I would have been much further ahead an hour ago before we started reading this. And to the comment about affordable housing, yeah, we do have a problem, but I'm a landlord. I own 3 dozen properties. 10% of my renters bought houses in the last 18 months. I found that phenomenal. And you know what I do when people buy houses? I let them out of their leases. So it's not as big of a problem as people think. If people want to look, they can find houses. It's my comment. Laugh all you want.
Any other? Yes, Bill?
I'd like to ask for 2 things if we can have a further discussion. I'd like to know what the strategy and themes are, rather than just look at 31 individual parcels. If we're intending to move something closer to downtown, I'd like to know what that thematic change is in the way that we're thinking about the gateway districts. And if there are other themes that link together some of these parcels, I'd like to discuss them in the context of themes. And I'd also like to ask that we include some of the M's, or that we at least have a discussion as to why there are no M's on the list.
M's?
M's are municipal.
Municipal, yes.
Oh, municipal.
The area around Campus Drive, there's a very, very large M there. And I've wondered why there's no housing there. So I'd like to ask if we could expand the discussion to include some M's.
Okay, well, let's talk about the motion further first. I understand your point. Any other discussion about the motion to continue everything?
I have a question.
Yes.
This is for Councilor Moreau. Did the Land Use Committee vote for these properties to be included, what we're looking at today?
They had consensus that these were all very doable and made sense, and it was about half of the original list we started with.
Okay, so you're working with a larger list, and this was just a subset of that. But the committee never voted for these particular ones.
We never voted on anything. We just took consensus. We didn't take votes. We were asked to look at things, to pass them back to city council, to then go through the process. So we took a look at a large amount of properties, and then we narrowed it down to what I was calling the green lights, as everyone thought these all made sense. They, were straightforward as far as making these changes based off of all of our discussions. And then the ones that weren't were set aside for further discussion down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Rochester.
Yes, Beth.
I would only be willing to vote to continue this if we do it to a date certain right now.
Do you have?
The only I'm aware of that, and the only reason I didn't give a date certain is because of the difficulty in scheduling a work session. But I could pick February, March, April planning board, by the April planning board meeting to allow 8 weeks.
Sooner.
Tell me when we're going to have the work session.
Oh, we have to find a time.
Well, we have 2 of them next week.
That pretty much is my point.
Do we have everything we need for a work session, or is there some work that needs to be done by staff to prepare for us to have a work session?
I think all the materials that the land use committee has, if they were supplied, as Mr. Mahana asked,
Requested.
I think that would probably do it.
The staff already has my side-by-side analysis of all the zoning that I did.
I think there's 2 sides of this. The land use committee did its thing based on that information. The fault with the process was the land use committee can't make a recommendation to council under the zoning ordinance. We have to do that. So I can appreciate why folks feel deprived of some information. That said, I would like the board to consider some of the obvious ones, like the mobile home park. I don't see that as willy-nilly. That seems like low-hanging fruit that just ought to happen. And maybe the church across from McDonald's. But that's my opinion. So any other discussion on the motion? It's Joe.
I could support the motion if I felt it was for better understanding of what's before us, clearer understanding, and to prevent, someone hobbling up to us later and accusing us of not doing our position and our job and not understanding it. I want to, as a member of staff, I want to defend staff a little bit here. Moving forward in 2024, I want us to stop speaking about staff in a negative way. And staff's doing they have a very difficult, hard job. I think that the information that Council Moreau put together is amazing. I know a huge amount of work has been done on this. When it comes through us, I want to make sure we do it properly. But I want us to stop speaking in a negative way about staff. I don't think that's productive. I think it's counterproductive.
Thank you, Joe.
Considering a date certain, we have, sticking with Thursdays, and I don't know if this room is available, the 29th, March 7th,
29th of what?
February.
I could do that myself.
Available.
The room's available. Usually the 5th week of a month, things are.
Does the 29th work?
Yes, for me. You have one.
Gotta get it in my calendar.
Works for me.
So would you like to amend your motion?
I would amend my motion, let's see, I move to continue this action until, let me see, 1, 2,
29th.
Say the
3.
date, say the date and time, February 29th,
I'm
6
counting the
o'clock.
Thursdays in March. 1, 2, 3, it's the 21st, correct, is our next meeting?
That's our meeting, 29th of
29th
February.
of February.
You were talking about the work
The leap
session
year.
for February, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to continue this action until we've had the opportunity to review these individually at a work session on the 29th, but we're not going to vote again until the 21st of March.
Oh, you're talking about, I was talking about continuing it to a workshop on the 29th. That's what I was talking about.
But continuing it to the workshop, we don't vote at a workshop, so we have to wait until we vote, right? So that was going to use that date, meaning our next planning board meeting, which is only 30 days away, 4 weeks.
Well, can that 29th be a, why can't we
It could
structure
be,
that so we
it could
can
be a
vote?
regular meeting.
Yeah.
It could be a regular meeting. I mean, we can call it, we
Oh.
can work on things that night, but we can't vote on it.
Notice a regular meeting?
Yeah, that's,
That's 2 weeks from today. How much time do you
we'd
need
be-
to notice? Well, it's already been
It's-
noticed,
it's-
so we're just
No, we don't have to
continuing.
renotice it, continuing it. We're good with
Good
notice.
point.
So I think we're good.
if that's accurate, I agree. So I would continue until February
29th to 6 o'clock.
February 29th at 6 o'clock, correct.
Are we saying that, could you just clarify, is it a working session or is it an actual planning board meeting?
Actual
It's
plan.
an actual planning board meeting where we will work through these details after having received the additional materials from staff.
And that's got to be, so I use the
Soon.
term work session, so if I change my term work session to planning board meeting on February 29th,
Continue this matter until the 29th at 6 o'clock.
that works for me.
Does the second agree with that?
Who's second?
Yes, second.
Okay, great.
Does everybody understand?
We have a roll
People
call vote.
participate by Zoom?
Excuse me?
Can people participate by Zoom,
Members or public?
members?
It's in our rules that we just have to
It's-
vote on
it's-
it if there aren't enough, right? Isn't that what we did
We have to vote to let somebody in by Zoom that night.
that
There
night?
has to be a reason, a good reason, and the board has to agree to it.
Well, short notice of a meeting, I think, would apply.
Yeah.
It may.
We have a roll call vote.
So we've had a roll call, request for roll call.
Ms. McGala,
Yeah, yes.
Mr. Giuliani,
Yes.
Counselor Moreau,
Yes.
Mr. Bowen. You vote on this matter?
He's not voting
I'm
tonight.
not voting.
Bill's not voting tonight.
Mr. Hewitt,
Yes.
Mr. Armita,
Yes.
Mr. Mahana,
Yes.
City Manager,
No.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
passed.
Okay. We are through that. We have lots of meetings this month. Next item on the agenda is preliminary conceptual consultation, request of 100 Durgan Lane LLC as owner for property located 100 Durgan Lane, requesting residential redevelopment to include 360 residential housing units with approximately 580 parking spaces and 10% community space, including associated site improvements for parking, pedestrian access, utilities, stormwater management, lighting, and landscaping. This property is located on Assessors Map 239, Lot 18, and lies in the Gateway Corridor District, G1, and Highway Noise Overlay Districts. Does everybody understand what a preliminary conceptual consultation meeting is? It is for discussion. It is non-binding for either the applicant or the planning board. But please share all your questions, concerns, accolades, however they wish to come up. Who wish to present for this, for the applicant?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm Attorney John Boson, and I represent the applicant, which is 100 Durgan Lane Owner LLC. We're talking about the proposed redevelopment of the former Christmas Tree Bed Bath & Beyond site. Before I begin, I'd like to start by introducing you to our development team. First, we have Andrew Hayes. Andrew is a managing director of Eastern Real Estate. Eastern is a national real estate development company with an office in Boston. Eastern is a very experienced real estate development company. They've developed over 15 million square feet of projects and is very well equipped to undertake this program. Next is Patrick Crimmins, who you know from Ty and Bond. Patrick will do the engineering for the proposed project. Also pleased to introduce Brett Benson from Util Architects and Planning and Nick Aceto from Aceto Landscaping. The site is comprised of 26.1 acres of land over 3 tax parcels that sits in the Gateway 1 district, whose purpose is to facilitate a broad range of housing types together with compatible commercial uses. G1 also encourages a high-quality pedestrian environment with moderate to high density. You will see from the plans tonight that the units that we're proposing to build are below the amount of units that are allowed by right. The project also reduces impervious surfaces, improves stormwater management across the site and within wetland buffers, and provides meaningful public space and improves connectivity throughout the site and the neighboring retail businesses, which you'll see on, if you go to the next slide. Actually, if you go one more after that. Yep, thank you. So this slide shows you the surrounding retail, commercial businesses. There are Whole Foods, TJ Maxx, there's banks, there's restaurants, there's Home Depot. So there's a nice variety of commercial uses that will be surrounding this project. Proposed plan also provides for 360 rental housing units with approximately 580 parking spaces. 10% or 2 acres of the project will be dedicated to public or community space, which the team will go through with you shortly. So with that background, I'd like to invite Andrew Hayes to the podium. Andrew's going to discuss some of the development objectives. Brett will then come up and show you some of the site restrictions that and restraints that we've dealt with on the project. Then Nick and Brett will walk you through the proposed site and the overall program. And Patrick will finish by discussing the anticipated approvals, the traffic impacts and public benefits. And of course, the team will answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, John. Ladies and gentlemen on the board, thank you for the time this evening. My name is Andrew Hayes, as John mentioned, and I'm here representing 100 Durgan Lane owner, as well as my team from Eastern Real Estate. By way of a little additional background, Eastern Real Estate has over 25 years of experience investing, operating, and developing commercial real estate. Our founders, Dan Doherty and Brian Kelly, started their careers actually as retail brokers and founded Atlantic Retail before Eastern. I mention this because the revitalization of retail is embedded in our DNA. Our team has extensive experience transforming underutilized retail properties, which may in many instances mean adding additional uses or alternate uses. Specifically as it relates to Durgan Lane, our team has a proven track record of designing and constructing multifamily projects, and we believe that Durgan Lane is uniquely suited for housing. As John described, the Woodbury Ave corridor is extremely well served by retail. Both the amenities and the infrastructure, we believe, are a strong complement to a residential community. As an alternative to downtown Portsmouth, 100 Durgan Lane offers a unique, walkable lifestyle that is unmatched within the city of Portsmouth. Additionally, the proximity to Pease supports this employment engine within Portsmouth and the continued growth of the Portsmouth workforce. As John mentioned, our goal is to propose a sensitively scaled development project. The proposal you will see is below the as-of-right zoning, as we have prioritized a robust public space as well as a thoughtful urban design. The proposed project, as John mentioned, includes 360 market rate units, a residential community building, as well as approximately 2 acres of community public space. We have aimed to design a low-impact site plan that largely focuses on previously developed areas of the site and reduces impervious surfaces and improves stormwater management across the property. Additionally, we have also sought to improve connectivity to the site to enhance multimodal communication as well as a network to and around the adjacent properties. With that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Brett Benson, to present the plan.
Thanks, Andrew. Good evening, everybody. My name is Brett Benson. I'm a principal at UTEAL. We're an architecture and planning firm. If you wouldn't mind advancing the slide one more beyond this one. So before we review the proposed project, we really wanted to review some of the constraints since they're going to help put our plans in context. This first slide shows some of the access easements on the site and that connect with our neighbors. Next. So a power line easement covers the east edge of the site, including the entrance to the property from Durgan Lane. There's some underground water and sewer lines that transit the site as well. Next. And importantly, wetlands and the associated buffer zones are on the north and east of the site, including a conservation easement to the north that extends to Gosling Road. So next. So what you can see here are all of the constraints overlaid together. And you can also see that the development will be concentrated on the currently developed footprint on the site. Next. So we are proposing a multifamily residential neighborhood that has strong connections to the surrounding community. Convenient access to open space will be the defining feature of this neighborhood, with 2 acres of community space. Access to the site is from the south, the east, and the north. And at this intersection of these roads sits the community building, and a public open space that is really the central social heart of this neighborhood, with an additional common space at the end of this extension of Durgan Lane. So I'd like to invite my colleague Nick Aceto up from Aceto Landscape Architects. We're going to talk a little bit about how the site is organized. And if you go to the next slide, please. First off, the site is really organized around this extension of Durgan Lane, which we imagine as a walkable main street for the neighborhood. A central community green is going to be a focus of this development, and it's going to be kind of the heart of a network of open spaces. And Nick is going to kind of walk us through those next.
Thank you, members of the board. I'm Nick Aceto with Aceto Landscape Architects. We're a studio based out of Portland. Really excited about this project. It's a great opportunity. We work on a lot of housing across New England and other regions, and this is a really great project and great team that we're excited to work with. So I just have a couple of slides, as Brett mentioned. I'll give you kind of an overview of the approach and general site framework. One of the challenges of any multifamily project is, as with this one, is dealing with and managing kind of the overall parking ratio and requirements on the site, and also the distribution of that parking and vehicle circulation across the site when you have a number of units like we do here. So really thinking about, from a high level, our approach being thinking about those parking fields more as urban streets, or contributing to kind of the community space or social spaces and social kind of values of the community. So with that, as Brett mentioned, Durgan Lane on Plan South, we're thinking of Durgan being an extension within the site of almost a Main Street condition, with parallel parking on one side and head-in parking on the other side, kind of narrowing the footprint of that roadway. And that also creates this activation along that big green community space that you see in the center there. And then Durgan Lane connects up to what is a muse, a different kind of street typology, where the roadway kind of alternates along its path with parking on either side and planting. So you have this kind of regular cadence of planting and streetscape, street trees. So when you look down that lane, you don't just see a huge parking field and lots of impervious surface and lots of headlights kind of shining into the windows of some of those ground floor units, but it starts to feel like a piece of the landscape. So those kind of vehicle circulation pieces are actually contributing components to the overall community space. And then the pedestrian network is obviously another important component. We really thought carefully and worked with Brett and the architecture team and the ownership team to carefully site the buildings and the building massing, so that we thread this pedestrian framework through the site, and we have a very porous site, so it feels like welcoming to the public and visitors as they approach the site, but also for residents to be able to kind of leave their car behind and walk to some of the community spaces or walk to some of the surrounding commercial uses, as John pointed out. Next slide. So this is actually pointing out some of the vehicle spaces. So if we can go back a slide. So again, just to point out the community spaces. So we have kind of three different typologies. There's the common, so that's the large green in the center that relates to that Main Street. And that's more of a civic scale space, public facing, feels like it really participates in that Durgan Lane extension, kind of welcome you into the site. And then we have been, we're proposing a community building down to the south. That's the orange building that kind of anchors that site. And then the second typology is kind of the yards and courts. And those are these smaller spaces that are kind of interspersed with each building that really feel like they are more private in scale. Those could be kind of barbecue, outdoor grilling spaces, smaller social spaces that are kind of intra-building kind of community socializing space. And then these green alleys that really connect and thread, like I said, all the way through the site, between buildings in both directions, that are heavily planted, robust planting scheme, and have these moments throughout the site where, again, you're kind of encouraging the residents or visitors to walk and kind of bump into each other, and it really reinforces this sense of community. I think we can advance to the next slide. I think I touched on a lot of these. I think with that, oh, here's the next slide, sorry.
All right.
So these are the community spaces, just illustrating that diagram again, where we're pulling in the open space, the surrounding wetland landscape, and then the smaller kind of moments, the green alleys between the buildings, the larger civic space in the center that's kind of anchored by the community building, and then again, you can see kind of a number of outdoor rooms that we're creating with the building massing and overall site organization. I think with that, pass it off to Brett.
Okay, thanks, Nick. So in terms of building design, the buildings are going to be a mix of 3- and 4-story buildings. It really serve to frame the open space throughout the neighborhood. Our focus with the design is going to be on developing more human-scaled buildings that encourage connections among the residents. Next. And we want to encourage connection to the site through a variety of transportation options. Vehicles are going to be connected to and through the site on 3 sides, the north, south, and the east. Next slide. And we're going to encourage and support bike use with convenient bike storage throughout the site and roads that anticipate the future Woodbury Avenue bike corridor. We're also going to explore the possibility of adding a coast bus stop on the site. Next. Pedestrian connections are important not only within the site, but also to the surrounding areas. We'd like to explore extending a sidewalk connection to Durgan Square and the shopping options there, as well as some low-impact pathways to Gosling and the Crossings shopping area off to the north. Next. And then our approach to sustainability really starts with site planning. This is going to be a walkable neighborhood with bike and transit access. There's going to be limited impervious area with landscaping that uses native plantings to help support the existing ecosystem. We will have on-site solar PV ready infrastructure as well as EV charging ready spaces. And in terms of the building design, we are looking towards efficient all-electric building systems, looking at efficient lighting and specific attention to building solar orientation so that we can optimize daylighting and natural ventilation in those spaces, really promoting kind of healthy indoor lifestyles and indoor air quality. We are near the highway, so we are going to be looking at acoustic comfort in particular and really promoting excellent thermal comfort. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Patrick to talk about some of our conditional use permits.
Thank you. Good evening, folks. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Patrick Crimmins with Ty and Bond. We're the civil engineers for the project. So this slide here, what I wanted to just talk about is what we're anticipating upcoming for permitting through both you folks and also the state of New Hampshire. So in this, gateway zone, we are going to need a conditional use permit for the site development area because we are providing more than one building on the site. And with that, we'll need to provide that 10% community space that Nick and Brett had just talked about. But in particular, you see that sub-bullet that I identified, it's lot frontage. One of the things we just wanted to raise with you folks to discuss this evening following the presentation, we'd like to hear your feedback on this is relative to the snapshot that you see in the bottom there. Literally speaking, with the zoning, we need to be set back anywhere from 10 to 30 feet from the frontage, which is that circular lot line on Durgan Way, where there probably was a cul-de-sac there at one point, or it was contemplated as one, which is why it sits the way it does. Certainly, given the existing land and the way it's situated with the constraints that Brett had showed, we have the power line easements, and obviously we have the wetlands to consider. It's going to be impossible to meet those setbacks literally. And I raise that because the provisions in the ordinance does allow the planning board to increase the setback where the adjacent land uses may be incompatible. That's section 10.5B41.60. So I just want to raise that with you folks. We would identify that in our conditional use permit request, but we want to discuss it early with you. we want to make sure that we're taking all the right steps and that is something that could be sought through you folks so that we're not getting hung up in the middle of permitting and realizing that we need to go back to the zoning board of adjustment.
What section was that again, Patrick?
It's
Sorry.
10.5B41.60.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
No problem. So that's the conditional use permit. We do lie within the highway nose overlay district, which you folks had an application on earlier. We will be engaging acoustical engineer to support the project team and bring forth that conditional use permit for you. And also we're going to need a wetland conditional use permit for any work that we are doing within the buffer. You can see from the constraints maps that Brett had previously shown, we're trying to stay within that existing footprint that's already previously developed. So we think it's going to be an improvement to the site overall, particularly from a green space and stormwater management standpoint. Then to the right, we have some other notable approvals and review items. The first item there is traffic evaluation. It's not really a specific approval itself. It's tied to your site review permit, which would need to go through the technical advisory committee. I'll touch upon that more detail on the next slide. The reason I bring that up is because of what exists out there today versus what we're proposing and the net trip generation, but I'll discuss that a little more in detail on the next slide. Obviously, we'll need site review approval with you folks. And then from the state side of things, we're going to need an alteration of terrain permit for the stormwater management design. This site was actually permitted prior to the enactment of the alteration of terrain regulations, so there will be a significant improvement in stormwater for this site, which is currently a very large sea of asphalt and a big box. We'll be breaking that up with significant green spaces and sustainable stormwater design practices. We'll need a sewer connection permit, which will have to be coordinated first through the city of Portsmouth. It requires a signature from the engineer before it can go up to DES, and then during construction, we'll need an EPA general construction permit that will also require a stormwater pollution plan be implemented and observations be performed throughout the duration of construction to ensure that everything's on the up and up with relation to sediments and erosion. Next slide, please. So I talked about the traffic evaluation. The reason I bring that up is this site, when you look at it from a trip generation standpoint, looking at ITE, and I will qualify, I'm not a traffic engineer. I know enough about ITE and trip generation to present this, but just wanted to bring this up here. Typically, not always is the reason for a traffic study, but often in the city of Portsmouth, the threshold that triggers a traffic study is a net increase in 100 trips during any peak hour. So the reason I bring that up is because if you look at the existing use, the retail space that's out there, the 78,000 square feet versus the 360 units that we are proposing, when you run those trip generation numbers using the land use codes for ITE, you'll see that it's actually a negligible increase or actually a significant decrease depending on which peak hour you're looking at. There is I think it's a 12 trip increase during the weekday morning. That's negligible. You'll never notice that during a peak hour. And then you can see that there is a significant reduction in those peaks in the afternoon and the Saturday midday. So I wanted to bring that up for, to hear your feedback, your thoughts on traffic, the need for a traffic study. Again, we don't want to get into the middle of permitting and find out that the trip generation shows that we don't need a traffic study, but that for other reasons, maybe you folks feel that we do. Next slide, please. And then lastly, just to kind of close this out and open it up to you folks for a dialogue, I just wanted to touch on the public benefits. We did go over this, but the project is going to be required to provide 10% community space, and it will be a significant area. There's going to be 2 acres, which Brett and Nick reviewed with you, a mix of the greenway, common areas, the pocket parks, recreation courts. We're looking at community walking trails, trying to make this a nice walkable community and something that the public can use. The multimodal connections were also touched upon during the presentation, but again, we're trying to look at getting ways to connect out both to Gosling Road and out towards Woodbury Avenue through pedestrian walkways, multimodal multi-use paths, and then we mentioned the opportunity, we're going to reach out to Coast to see if there's an opportunity for a bus stop here. Low-impact site design, we will have to incorporate through the stormwater management design, sustainable stormwater design practices. Nick touched upon it a little bit, the Green Street sustainable design strategies that will be incorporated into the urban planning. And then the potential economic benefits, this project will create 300 construction jobs while it's being built, and actually 20 permanent jobs after the fact. With the change in use, it's anticipated that it's going to increase tax revenue by over $1 million. And then obviously the largest one is the creation of housing stock, which we all know is needed in the city of Portsmouth. This is going to be a nice mix of studios, 1-bedrooms and 2-bedrooms, to meet that wide breadth of the rental market, water, and, to help support Portsmouth's growth and its employers. So with that concludes our presentation. I guess what we'd like to do is say thank you for the opportunity to speak here this evening, and look forward to hearing your feedback.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
Not sure who's going to answer us.
Pose it and
Actually, Titan Bond probably can answer these the best.
Okay, sure.
Because it's more like an engineering question. So the site looks like it's got access from 4 corners. One of them is a named road, Durgan.
Correct.
But you've got the road going out to Motel 6, you got the road going out past Home Depot, and then you got showing access around the backside of the Hampton Inn. Those appear to be unnamed roads. Who maintains them? Is there a municipal services agreement?
They're private easements. They're currently private easements.
So who maintains them?
The owners of the properties and the easement right holders.
Okay, so then let's talk about the road going out to Motel 6. It looks like a war zone. There's potholes, the guardrails are destroyed. Whose responsibility is to fix that today?
I would think it's the current owners.
Of Motel 6? Or of this property?
Of this property, or the easement, or whoever has the easement rights.
Okay, so this property controls the easement rights to all 3 of those unnamed roads?
Yes, it has. Well, it has the easements overlaid on this parcel to provide access for the surrounding parcels. They're reciprocal easements for access.
Okay. So the city doesn't maintain those roads? So
That's
all the
correct.
paving and the guardrails that are destroyed out there are the responsibility of this parcel?
Right.
Okay.
Any improvement to that would be done through the site review process as part of this
Thank
project.
you. That's a good answer.
And I would just add, those are mutual easements. The maintenance responsibilities vary, by road. And I should just clarify that we, as the ownership group or the proponent here, we are the contract buyer of the parcel. We don't currently own the parcel. But
Yeah,
certainly
understood.
that would be our responsibility going forward.
Afterwards?
Yes.
Understood. Thank you.
Paul?
I would stick with that, with the auto connections there. That's, I'm imagining several hundred Trader Joe's fans living in your property, and that goes through a parking lot to get to Gosling, right? I mean, in effect, you could go from Arthur Brady to Gosling right through this property, but I'm just thinking of the increased traffic and trip counts in that direction. Something that you should definitely pay attention to when you come back.
Well, picking up on that, since you raised the traffic issue, although the total number of trips will be reduced, the type and time of day and direction of those trips is probably going to change, given the change in use, particularly with P's across the highway. And I don't know if you could give us some origin destination estimates, because if 800 trips, a significant portion of those decide they all want to live here and work in P's, that could create an issue on the intersection, under the Spalding and past the Spalding. I don't know how the board feels about that, whether we need a letter, an opinion letter from an engineer, but I guess related to that, what is the status of that connection to the north? Do you guys own that, or is it an easement on somebody else's property?
So the limits of the colored kind of site plan, as you see on the screen today, that is owned up to that point by us, and then it's a mutual easement of access between multiple parties.
Is there a limit on that easement in terms of, I mean, could you overburden it by putting too many cars at a certain time of day or anything like that on it?
There's not a volume restriction at this point.
Okay.
No one's going to use that access to get to Pease because you can only turn right when you get out at Motel 6. What they're going to end up doing is going back the other way and going onto the highway and then getting off at the exit.
Unless they propose to rebuild it.
North of Brady.
Well, it's a divided, so Gosling is divided, so you couldn't turn left even
Correct.
if,
Even if you wanted to.
yeah.
Go the Home Depot way. They go out.
Well, I work at Pease, so I use that road every day to go to Home Depot or to my bank at Chase Bank or to Whole Foods for lunch.
So it's not a morning issue, it could be an evening issue.
Well, that's exactly it. Coming off of Pease, going into this development past Motel 6, that could be significant. But you're guessing if they're going to work at Pease, but unless you put a big leasing sign up at Lonza, put a big leasing sign at Lonza and you get all their engineers, but.
It's just, Pease is a major traffic generator, as we all know, and the intersections around Pease are at times rather congested. Speaking personally, I'd like to see it addressed in some fashion, so leave it to your creativity. If the rationale, if you determine that Pease workers are unlikely to be in here, or only a certain number of them are likely to be in here, or you know how to do it. So.
Well, even to Beth's point, when I'm there, I go to Home Depot and then get right back on to Spalding and then get back off to Pease, rather than going out to Woodbury, because Woodbury's a mess.
You go the other way, right?
Maybe some wayfinding, right? To Pease.
Yeah, exactly.
And just to, final point on traffic and access, these are technically then driveways through the site. Do you intend to change, like gate them or do anything like that?
We do not know.
Okay.
We intend to maintain access as it stands today to and through the other parcels.
Are you obligated to maintain those for through traffic north-south?
Between the Motel 6 and effectively the Home Depot, we do need to maintain access.
Okay.
Could you just explain your thought process? And not that I don't like your design, but I want to know. I guess I pictured possibly more hidden parking, less buildings, but taller buildings, because I think you could have actually gotten probably even more green space and more community space by having less smaller buildings kind of scattered all over the place. So just if you could explain your thought process between the two kind of options.
Sure. I'll certainly speak to the building massing as far as, how we approach the program. And then I may ask Brett to speak a little bit to just the urban design and how the site plan ultimately came together. But our primary goal when approaching the site was looking at the zoning parameters as they stand today. So one of the key limitations that we have, in addition to the height, was the number of units that could be programmed per building. So the reason why we approached 3 and 4 story buildings is we felt like that was a good mix of building typologies, which also allows us to have a wider range and diversity of units within each of those building types. And also gives us some variability to the site as you approach, so you don't feel like it's a uniform experience as you're going through. It also gives us the added benefit as we think about, to Patrick's earlier comments, the highway noise overlay considerations, creating a bit of a sound buffer with some larger scale along the highway.
And I'll touch a little bit on the kind of building design and overall site planning objectives. We really, as I said, want to create human-scaled buildings so that this development feels like it's a neighborhood, that it's connected, that people can feel like they can walk around, that you're not surrounded by parking in the way that you are on the site now, or in some other more suburban locations for multifamily housing. We also want to put an emphasis on the green space, but make the green space large enough that it feels as kind of socially cohesive and not just leftover spaces between the buildings. And so we try to find the right balance here between 3 and 4 story buildings, working with the zoning constraints in terms of the number of units per building, making sure that they weren't too long, and so on. And this is kind of where we've ended up. Again, we're at concept level, so we're appreciating all of your comments and, would love to continue to receive more.
Joe?
Given everything that you just said and some of the things you said earlier about, the sustainability practice of the project and what Beth was just suggesting, why haven't you considered podium construction where your parking is open but covered beneath? You're not plowing parking lots, you're not, you're still allowed to go 4 stories above a podium. You could actually do more housing, you could have more open space, you could have more, don't know, I just don't know if you would consider that.
We have definitely talked about it as a team. I think I'll start with the design perspective. Andrew might have an economic perspective on it as well. From a design perspective, we love having units on the ground floor so that there's that sense of connection, so that there are front doors and windows and eyes on the street. It doesn't feel like the units are elevated up above and the streets feel vacant. We really want this to feel, like I said, a walkable community, one where people are making social connections. And podium construction offers a lot of benefits, but I think one major downside is that when you have parking on the ground floor, you just don't have that social cohesion that you can get with more human-scale buildings like these ones.
Another great benefit of it when you're considering the greenness of your development is people aren't having to go out, start their car, scrape ice. They're not having to cool their car. It's not, the cars are kept cool, dry, ice-free. It's a luxury, actually. It's nice to have, covered parking. But, again, we're just here informally asking these questions, so.
Jane?
Yeah, I appreciate the design, but what's missing for me is any kind of child-friendly elements and also pet-friendly. So I'm not seeing that these community trails or bike paths or whatever have safety precautions, that if they cross the roads, that there are crosswalks, that there's, signage to protect children, and just play areas and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Looks like Nick wants to cover this one.
I think Brett was probably about to say the same thing as me, but we focused really a lot on creating, well, for one, just to back up, this plan is pretty early in the conceptual stage, and we're doing a lot of that open space and amenity programming right now, and talking about the specific design of those spaces and what actually goes in them, whether it be some play areas or other program elements. So we'll have more detail. It's forthcoming. And then with that as well, I think you mentioned kind of pedestrian connections and safety. You'll also see more detail in forthcoming plans where we've continued to break up the parking fields and make more very deliberate linkages between the sidewalks across those parking fields. So really naturally through the design, making it safer and more walkable.
Great. And then my last question is what you really mean by off-road multi-use paths. You list pedestrian walkways and bike paths, but what are your off-road multi-use paths? What does that amount to, that concept?
I think at a conceptual level, we would love to integrate the wetlands on the site with the residents' experience and anybody who's visiting this as well. So our concept is, to the extent possible and respecting all of the restrictions that come along with the wetlands, create paths for people to walk through and enjoy the natural spaces. We think that it's a great attribute of this site, and we really want to take advantage of that so that people feel more connected with nature.
And Jim, sorry.
Oh, okay. I have several questions. Some may be answered by yourself or some by others, but I'll just start off. The Highway Noise Overlay District, will that be addressed through architecture or through structure like a sound wall?
We're a little early to really understand exactly how we'll be addressing the overlay ordinance. We do have an acoustic engineer on our team, and we'll be diving into that in the coming weeks.
Okay. And it's been mentioned a few times that you're building less than you're allowed by right. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And so I'm just curious, how many units could you have built by right?
think Andrew has the specific numbers.
So, as per the base zoning, you're allowed 16 units per acre. We got about 26 acres. So you're in excess of 400 units that we could ultimately bring on the site. If we did pursue the conditional use permit for the density bonus, that increases, I believe, to 24 units. So that would grow pretty significantly over that. The plan that we have on the screen today is approximately 14 units per acre. So again, less than the 16, and then certainly less than the 24.
Okay, all right, great. Now, I don't want to beat this again about the access easements, but it's just that I'm most familiar with this type of situation where you have 3 contiguous properties and they all have rights to go back and forth, but typically you're only responsible for maintenance on your own property. Now, is this different?
It's unfortunately not a one-size-fits-all, but generally, I think the way that it has been managed historically is that each property owner has managed their own portion.
Okay, so that
in
you
practice,
own your property,
correct.
you maintain your property, but you're allowed other people can come and go.
That's correct, and that again, that's I think how it's played out in practice. The easements themselves, I think, are a little bit nuanced.
Okay, because I think of my biggest concern here with access is the Motel 6 site there, and coming right off of Gosling. It doesn't even feel like a road. It feels like you're on the back of a parking lot, then you hit a stop sign. So you won't be able to make any improvements to that. That's just going to have to be as it is.
That's correct. That is not our property, and we certainly plan to engage with our abutters and have conversations with them about, certainly our plan and the implications it has, throughout construction and then thereafter. And if that ultimately comes up in conversation, we can certainly cross that bridge. But as it stands today, and our operating assumption is that that will remain as it exists today.
Okay, all right. And I just want to confirm also, I heard that there'll be some relief needed for wetlands buffer issues. Now, will that be new construction, or anything you have in the buffer now is what's there now?
Yeah, I'll let Patrick speak to that. He's better suited than I.
Yeah, we're not anticipating relief. It's just that because we're working in the wetland buffer, we need a permit. And as long as you're touching the ground within that wetland
You'll
buffer,
be working in it, but nothing permanent will stay there?
we will improve what's existing out there, is the
All right, so
intent.
there's some existing features in the buffer.
There's quite a bit of, yes, pavement that resides in the buffer already.
I just want to, so you won't have any new improvements in the buffer?
That is not the intent, no.
Okay, all right. Let's see, lastly, not second to last, how did you come up with your parking demand estimates? I think it was 1.6 per unit. I was just curious how
Sure.
that came about.
We surveyed a number of comparable properties in the market. We also engaged a third-party consultant to help us evaluate, based on the unit mix that we preliminarily have drafted, what they believe is appropriate to meet the demand. I think one thing that we anticipate, given the location of the site, is that it is a driver resident base as opposed to bike or other means of travel.
Okay, so you won't be using Portsmouth regs?
What's that?
You won't be using Portsmouth parking demand regs? You've come up with your own?
We are conforming with the demand regs.
I know
so-
you'll conform with them, but you're not using them. You've looked outside for your 1.6 estimate.
We've looked for market information to help inform what we believe is appropriate to meet the demand. Correct.
Okay. And lastly, I'd like to agree with the chair on some type of additional traffic, because I understand it's a tremendous decrease, but the directionality and the use has changed. So I think it's worth more than just what you've provided on your screenshot here as far as, peak hour demands. I think it's a big enough project, certainly.
Understood.
To warrant some type of traffic analysis. That's
right.
Couple more questions. You say it's going to be on-site solar ready. Are you planning on actually installing solar panels, or is it just going to be ready? I guess explain that more.
So the list of sustainability initiatives are primarily a kind of a menu of options that we are evaluating. And that certainly is, top of mind. I know that's a topic of conversation that is ongoing. And I think it's a matter of trying to figure out what is the optimal location, given, where the site plan ultimately lands, as well as, how does the building program take advantage of that. Certainly on the EV side, we anticipate that will be not only a driver and a demand of the residents, but also something that we'll want to see and build for, in anticipation of future growth and resident usage.
And then my other question is, it looks like as you're coming down Durgan Lane, just before you, or just after you get onto your property, but before you get to where your first crossover road is, are you doing like some sort of community garden, or is that a landscaped area? I'm trying to figure out what that little area is.
As are we, to be frank. I think the way that we see that is, it could be a dog park. It could be a play area. As Brett mentioned, we are exploring the opportunity to bring in a coastal bus stop, or coast bus stop, excuse me. And so I think depending on ultimately what program comes together in that space, that will ultimately get reshaped.
Okay, I think that's all.
Could you bring up the site plan, the colored one?
This is the area I was talking about right there.
No, we have two sets of hands. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I had a question, so, sorry. I'll get to you. You've got a number of different building types here, and what you've done with the sort of the northeast quadrant there, next to the green in your community building, where you've got the green space between the area, I'm curious, what's your front to back? Where are you building fronts? Where are you building backs? How are you handling that? Because as you move towards the highway, you're getting pretty thin there. It's all parking and, I'm wondering if there's a way to vary building types, or if you could just talk about it. You've got a number of different building types. You're flipping them back and forth. I realize this is a conceptual sketch. It's early on, but, how much can it be refined? Can you perhaps take some of the green space that's between the parking area and the buildings, if that's going to be the parking face of the building, and put some of that into the green space that could be in the middle for more community use? I know it's a tight site, even though it's a big site with what you're doing. If you could just speak to that.
Sure. Brett, do you want to speak to buildings?
I'll start with the buildings, which is, they are very conceptual right now, so lots of refinement to do still. In terms of overall site plan and the mix of 3- and 4-story buildings across the site, it's definitely something that we're looking at. It continues to evolve every week as we work on the project further. In a big picture, we want to make sure that every building has access to meaningful green space on the site, and that it's convenient and that you can walk out your front door and have access to that. We also have to, live with the reality that this is primarily a vehicle-centered site. And that people want convenient parking because it's cold out here in the wintertime, and and there's snow on the ground, and we just have to deal with that reality, right? So we're trying to find that right balance so that it doesn't feel like a sea of parking, that there's real green space for everybody. And the next time we come to you, this site plan will look different.
Okay, but just like on your west side, would those be buildings split down the middle of the center hall and then fronting on the parking on two sides, or how would that type of building work?
So that type of building we're imagining right now is a 4-story building, and that would be an elevator building. It would have an entrance facing the parking, and it would have an entrance facing the green space, so that you could, come in, you can bring your groceries from a convenient parking space and go up to your unit, but you can also go downstairs, bring your dog, bring your kid, walk around the neighborhood, and enjoy all the open space.
If you're on an end unit.
Pardon me?
If you're on an end unit.
Yeah, what we're imagining is that there's a door facing the parking and a door facing the green space.
Not too far away.
Yeah.
And just the last, and then I'll stop. What about the roofs? They're kind of looks like
Butterfly roofs.
Still in progress.
Skate parks?
Still in progress.
Still in progress.
Skate park, that's a good idea.
That's what it looks like. So, Joe.
Just a very quick question. It might be premature, but have you had early discussions about the potential for fast charging EV stations here?
It's on their list.
We have not yet, no. But that's certainly something that we'll evaluate. I think increasingly we're seeing that as a major driver or a major request from residents. And so just understanding, what that demand is today and what it wants to be down the road is, top of our list as we're continuing to evaluate site plan.
And having, it's been a while since I've designed housing developments, I used to, but I was shocked to learn the volume of packages that will be Amazoned to this site, and the need for actual buildings to accommodate package deliveries.
We have spent countless hours talking about package delivery. I think for the most part, where we're leaning is that central community building will become the home for that package, both receiving and distribution to residents. End of the day, I think trying to get the Postal Service and the various delivery groups to understand the site plan and to actually deliver it to each individual building is a tall order. And I think that will allow us better control, better security, and ultimately better resident experience.
And I'm just seeing it now, and I'm sorry, before I lose the floor. The public space, which is, very appealing, and it sounds great, it's so internal to your development that when you talk about, security and kind of mixing the general public within the development, should it be more peripheral, or?
The green space itself?
Yeah.
I think the way that we're thinking about that first entry point coming into the site is that, that's our main street. The community building that you're seeing kind of right at that point of entry on the right-hand side is, likely a one-story building that kind of invites you into the neighborhood first, and then you get exposed to the open green space. In addition to that, there will certainly be a robust and thoughtful wayfinding signage plan, because I think, both for residents, prospective residents, as well as visitors, will want to make sure that it's clear, how to circulate in and around the site.
Thank you.
I might have more. Have you given any consideration to, you talked about having like a mailroom and postal drop-off, and maybe that's where everyone's mailboxes are. Have you given any consideration into some businesses like childcare or things like that that might be mixed into this site that would be really useful for the people living there?
We have discussed it. I think one of the reasons why this site is so appealing is because of the amenities that exist today around the site already. And quite frankly, I think when you look at the different uses that are available around us, those are very well executed, and they meet, for the most part, the list of requirements or, wishes, quite frankly, that we would anticipate from our residents. So at this point, we're not anticipating having on-site retail serving the project itself.
You should really think about childcare. It's a real necessity. I don't have children, but this is what I hear.
Yes, Bill?
So this is the opposite strategy of what we talked about earlier tonight. I don't know if you people were here. Rezoning 30 properties so that we could put a few people here and a few people there, which has some advantages. This is the opposite. This is scale. So you're going to do 1 or 2% of the population of Portsmouth in this one facility, one development. And you've got a neighborhood around you that has, the major amenities. And you can stand on your property and look at the Lonza sign across 16. So are there any things that we should think about the benefits of economy of scale as opposed to doing things in small numbers?
That's a great question. I think, going back to the traffic analysis, for one example, looking at what is in place today versus, what we're anticipating down the road, the fact that, residential is a smaller demand driver of trips, I think is compelling. So looking at sites that are already developed, and is there a way to repurpose them for dense residential program, is certainly, in keeping with Eastern's approach to, redevelopment and repositioning of retail sites historically.
So adding facilities, Beth asked about childcare.
Yep.
Gymnasium, coffee shops, laundry, dog walking services, that you can do when you have enough people on one site, and walking paths and bicycle stuff and charging stations. And
Certainly.
yeah. So I've heard, this thought developed in the context of Fox Run, but you're kind of a local Fox Run.
I might,
One more?
possibly two more. Of course, now I'm going to lose my train of thought. You guys have actually looked at our zoning, and you are in the Gateway 1, and we were just looking at expanding the Gateway 1 to other lots in our city. So I'm just curious if you have any feedback of whether or not, because we're trying to make our zoning as flexible as possible, and it would be really great to have your feedback about that, and whether or not you also considered workforce housing here at all, or any units.
Sure. In regards to Gateway 1, we did feel like this site was well suited to be programmed in a manner that was in conformance with the code. I think we have the unique benefit of having scale and also having a little bit of a buffer between our adjacent uses that not all properties will have. But I think for the purpose of our planning exercise at Durgan Lane, it was a very complementary match for our approach. In regards to the exploration of workforce housing, we ultimately feel that the program that we're delivering and the mix of different unit types will meet a wide breadth of the market. Between the 3-story and the 4-story buildings, we're planning to have a wide range of unit sizes and types within each unit type, which I think, again, that allows for a breadth of price point and meets a lot of the professional workforce, the aging population, as well as young families.
Are these going to be rentals?
Yes.
I think I'm done.
Any other
Pops into my head.
comments for the applicants?
Just one very minor one, is the future presentation, I think, could have half the slides. Some of the slides could be combined, that's all. They're flipping through them is cumbersome, but that's all.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate the time tonight.
We've got a few more things. Does anybody else need a 5-minute break? Because I could use that.
I would love a bathroom break.
Okay, let's have a 5-minute break here.
Or I'll just go and you can keep talking. I don't care.
I was parked in a chair.
Who we got left? Who? Two things?
I'll tell you what, why don't you guys go ahead and continue? I'm just going to tell you, if you get up to Rockingham Planning Commission, that's all good. I spoke with Eric earlier, but there's the Salter Street. Go ahead.
Yeah? So you say we should keep going? You're taking a break, okay.
Oh, okay. Can I go?
You can take, well, almost.
Come to the agenda to figure out.
He'll call you up and, yep.
No, I don't think so. We're going to keep going.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hard to tell if an actual decision is.
All right, next up on the agenda, we have a city council referral, which is a request for Salter Street to be rezoned from waterfront business to general residence B. Since it's a city council referral, that means the council wants us to look at it.
Yes.
First, we will have, do we have to open a public hearing for her to speak?
No, there's no
No public hearing.
Right.
So who is here to present on that? Is that right?
I think it's just,
Could we allow the
you
person
can,
who's here to speak?
you could allow them.
I mean, we have
Right.
a short letter requesting it, but would you like to give us a short explanation? Thank you. Thank you.
Marcia McCormick, 53 Salter Street, and I just wanted to address this issue. It's very important. Waterfront business and residential living, there's always an impact on the residential way people live when there's a waterfront business. In this case, I'm motivated to appeal the zoning because of the large-scale constructions and reconfigurations of the area that I'm right on top of at the end of Salter Street. I'm kind of in a unique position because I'm right there, right on top of it, and nobody else on the street, you know, is right there like I am. So I just want to say that a letter that the Thompsons attorney had written to the Board of Adjustment.
Could we interrupt for 1 second? Sorry, I was supposed to ask you for your name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Name and
Marcia
address for the record.
I thought
That's
I
my
said
fault.
it.
That's my fault.
You just need to say her name. I think the address was.
Thank you.
Okay, Marcia McCormick.
Thank you.
So when the attorney wrote a letter to the Board of Adjustment requesting relief to move that structure back and up, he said in the letter that if they were denied relief, they'd be forced to restore the structure to an office or event space, which would increase traffic and detract from the value of surrounding properties. Well, that possibility still exists under the ordinance. It still can happen. He also said that there isn't a single permitted waterfront business that would be appropriate on Salter Street, and that is the truth. It's a narrow, dead-end street, and even on a normal residential day, cars are not allowed to turn in the point of view area, so they have to back up, back into other people's driveway, back onto other people's lawn, and I've had people hit my house. You can't get out of the street conveniently. So I think the city needs to address the zoning in that area. I don't think it's unreasonable to have it just residential and not have any businesses, because it's not an area for business. And I think that's all I want to say. I mean, can they have short-term rentals in there? Can they have an event? Or I don't know. I mean, I think if the zoning was addressed properly, there wouldn't be any question about that these type of activities would happen. That's it. That's my appeal.
You're on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I know there's a recommendation. Should we add this to our discussion on the 29th, or do we have enough on the 29th?
I think it'd be a good time for it. Give it time to be aired out on the 29th.
Does that make sense?
Sure. I'm okay with that.
I mean, okay. Let's I mean, that's what we're doing on the 29th, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
So I suppose since it's a council referral, I need a motion to add this to our list of things to consider on the 29th at 6 o'clock.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None of that. Solar energy is next week. Electric vehicles, we've been working on it. It's not quite ready. It's almost ready. Just researching the topic as we've been talking, we being me and staff, learning more about just some of the little nuances and just working from things like Methuen, just getting it more in shape to talk about rather than saying, we're going to look at this, let's look at it and then be able to explain it. So possibly next week, we'll see how we do with it, but it's imminent. So on the solar, everybody's aware we're having a joint meeting with the HDC next week. The goal of that is to reach a consensus with the HDC, not on specific wording, but conceptual consensus, so that we can stop the workshop with them, convene a very short planning board meeting. I think it's at the library too, right?
It's at the library.
It is.
We only have 2 hours.
Where the planning board will make a recommendation that we tell the council what we've done conceptually to hopefully get their endorsement. Then it'll get drafted into actual proposed amendment language. That's the plan. So,
And we have the meeting on Thursday.
excuse me?
And we have a meeting next Thursday.
And we have the meeting with council on housing to receive the information from Portsmouth Listens and Howard and that whole process.
So I'll have the ability to phone in for the HTC work session? The library has the ability for me to Zoom in?
I don't know.
Yes, they do. In the Levinson room. I've been in meetings where people have Zoomed in before, so yes.
Because it's not a public hearing, there's no need for a vote, right? It's just a work session to allow me to.
There will be a vote, but your participating in the work session would be more important, actually, because hopefully the vote's going to be pro forma, because we'll have a consensus at that point.
Okay.
As I said, Eric Eby currently serves on the Rockingham Planning Commission Transportation Advisory Committee. He wants to continue. I'll just do that.
Mr.
Yes.
I read the letter from the Rockingham Planning Commission Chair, I think it's Mr. Roach, and he said TAC members are often city, town, and planners, planning board members, public works employees, or other members of community leadership, residents interested in transportation. I was just wondering, has any residents of Portsmouth made an interest in being on the transportation committee?
Not that I'm aware of.
I was just mentioning it. I'm sure Eric will do a fine job, but if we had a choice, I'd prefer a city resident to be on that committee. But if not, I'm sure he'll do fine. But if there was a resident and Eric, I might lean with the resident.
I think you get the point.
We typically don't have people beating down our door to be on the RPC.
It's their version of TAC, too, so.
Well, I know there's plenty of people in Portsmouth very interested in transportation policy.
I wonder if there's another way to get, I mean, they expressed an interest in being involved in the master plan process, and that will definitely have a transportation element. So that will loop them in.
I mean, I know you wouldn't think people would want to go, but I don't think we'd be too hard to find a resident in Portsmouth who would want to be on that committee at the RPC.
I have a phone near a microphone. That feedback usually happens because phones are too close to microphone.
Stop. Me again.
I'm like, it's driving me crazy.
Do you want to make a motion, then we can discuss it?
For Eric?
Right.
I thought it was just left up to me, actually. I just was.
No, I don't think I don't want to make a big deal out of it. I mean, I'm happy with Eric, but I just think, again, all things being equal, I'd like a Portsmouth resident.
Keep that in mind for the master plan discussions. I'm going to combine the next two. Even though we've adopted rules, I've already talked to the legal department. I would like to propose a new section of our rules that address mistakes, errors by planning board members that would be handled at the planning board level.
Can we go back? Because the letter says the planning board nominates a representative for consideration by the selectmen. We would be recommending to the council.
Well,
Council actually appoints, yeah.
Okay.
But I think we need a vote to recommend to the council.
And we do need a motion.
Make a motion, vote to recommend to City Council to appoint Eric Eby as the Portsmouth representative on the Rockingham Planning Commission Transportation Advisory Committee and Jillian Harris as an alternate.
Second.
Discussion. We think we've already discussed it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. So as I was saying, to have a provision where the planning board could institute a censure process for a member that made a mistake, did something wrong. Very preliminary thought. All I know is the U.S. Supreme Court has fairly recently endorsed this idea as something that it's historic in America, as it seems everything the Supreme Court references these days is historic. And very early idea. I don't know if there should be tiers. I don't know what to do, whether it should be just a censure with nothing if you do something the first time, if there should be censure with required continuing education if you do something 2 times. We can talk about it. I threw it out to the legal department, but I know the city attorney's gone on vacation, and I haven't had any feedback from them, so I don't know about that, but the idea is out there.
I have a comment and a motion to support that. My comment is, I think it's a good idea. I think we need to get some creative thinking and better ways of handling what we all went through on Monday and Tuesday. So I move that the planning board immediately select and retain outside counsel to advise the planning board on all matters, including the master plan, as well as amendments such as this.
Second.
I don't,
Oh,
that's not possible.
how are you going to do that?
I don't think we have money
Planning
to
board
do
doesn't
that.
have the
With-
authorization to spend money.
With the approval, I saw it, it actually says here with the approval of the city manager. I apologize, I was reading too fast. And so since that's the motion, we can second it again, please?
Second.
And to further discussion standpoint, it's been done in the past. Dexter Legg hired outside counsel with city manager's approval. And I think Monday and Tuesday, it was clearly shown that our city legal department created a charging document that was overreaching, and an outside counselor who is much more familiar with municipal law, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, was able to convince 7 out of 8 city councilors that that document was wrong. And for that reason alone, moving into things like the master plan and other planning things like zoning amendments that require a lot more legal analysis, there are outside counsel that specialize in this, and I think for the integrity of the city of Portsmouth, we should hire one. And we have the funds in the CIP for consultants and advisors to the master plan.
You raise an interesting point and a question. I'm processing it. I happened to talk to an attorney recently who was city attorney. No, he said he's municipal, so I don't know if it's a city or a town. And he found himself in a situation of having to proceed with punishment of a city employee who he'd been advising as the city attorney. And it caused some problems, big problems, he said. And I didn't explore it with him because I hadn't thought of this. I didn't know about what you're talking about when I spoke with him. I wonder if there's a conflict issue that should be considered. I don't know.
I wasn't here when the last outside counsel was hired. I know that was between zoning and planning. That's all I know. But was it useful? I don't know. I wasn't on the board then, but it seems like there's a precedence to do it. And
That's not a good precedent, so let's not look at that.
Well, again, I didn't see it. So, but in any organization or any business, there is a need for specialized consultants. And in this case, we're diving deep into major zoning. We have an example of something that went wrong, and I think we should have access to outside counsel.
Here's an idea, because I think it's a lot to consider. There's 2 things there. One is the one I talked about in the rules. I think that it's a concept, what I just threw out. I did the tiniest amount of research. I think it would help. I think it would help the city. I don't think we need the current system. It seems like we have the option of doing nothing or going to 150 miles an hour all at once. The concept of outside counsel, would you consider letting the master plan subcommittee investigate that?
As long as it wasn't just for the master plan, because that's not what my motion said. Planning board business.
So, using master plan money, that's why I related it to the master plan subcommittee.
Okay, but then if it was hired for planning board business before, where'd that money come from? That's finance department kind of a question, but I'm not talking about hiring somebody full-time for 200 grand.
Well, anybody else want to have any thoughts on, Bill, your hand up?
Is there any role for the State Municipal Association?
They provide resources to the city and to various departments, including the legal department, on a regular basis, so we're familiar with their resources.
So do they have resources that would be credible enough that if there is a need for an intervention, we can call upon them to?
They will not intervene in a city attorney matter. They will never disagree with the city attorney. That's policy.
They will not talk directly with a planning board member?
They will talk, they'll talk to me, and they do talk to me, but anybody who contacts them is precluded from saying, well, the city attorney told me this, and I don't agree with it. Well, they won't touch that. That's not what they do. So if you want a discussion like that, you have to hire outside counsel.
Mr. Chairman, I have an idea. It's late. Would it make sense for you, Mr. Mahana, to put this in writing or in a more formal proposal that we could consider? Because it feels a little, over the transom, not on the agenda, so that way we have time to thoughtfully deliberate.
I would need a lot more time to think about this before I could make a decision. Not that it's bad or good, I just need to process all of the nuances and.
I think that's fair.
Positives
I
and
mean,
negatives.
we are meeting several times in the next 2 weeks. Are you okay with that? And if not, we can force a vote.
Because it's late, and yeah, I agree, but it'll be up on the 29th. So I guess I'll withdraw my motion until the 29th.
Okay.
And somebody will put something together to submit, so we have something to review.
I will put it in writing.
Yep. Greg will do that. And
Does the second agree? Would the second agree?
Second, his withdrawal.
and unless there's something else, I am prepared to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.